across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, happy afternoon and early evening. This is Alex Phillips here with you on Drive until 7 o'clock. It's a pleasure and a privilege to have your company again this evening. Or if this is your first time, welcome aboard. What took you so long? Why haven't you been part of the cool crowd before, huh? We've been waiting for you. That's right. We were wondering when you'd wake up and realise that this is the place to be for truth bombs, common sense, opinions. This is like a mirror into your soul here. All the things that are going to come out of my mouth are things that you wish were coming out of your mouth. That is how we roll. We've got a lot to talk about today. Why is the West in so much fear? Why is it so scared all the time of everything? To the point that we've only just decided now that people yelling "globalise the intifada" might be a bit of a problem. It might be provocative. It might be inciting violence. What, it's taken you over 2 years to realise that, and at the cost of how many dead bodies? Another would-be terror attack at Bondi Beach, foiled again today. ISIS calling it a source of pride. It's obvious. These people in these hate marches, these pro-Palestine marches, weekend after weekend, a lot of them might be just idiots going along with it because they want to shower themselves in foam or rectitude, put a photograph of them gurning into Instagram looking like they are sort of morally perfect. But the problem is a lot of these are being organised, or at least are infiltrated, by some pretty horrific organisations, OK? We're talking about organisations, the ones that begin with H, you know, Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, the IRGC, Iran, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, you name it. If you were an Islamist who really wanted to cause problems, you're not going to be sitting that out, are you? You're not going to be thinking, oh, there they go, marching for Gaza. Don't fancy that. Might just stay at home and have a cup of tea and be peaceful today. Why has it taken them so long to do anything about this? It is fear. And we're seeing the same, aren't we, with the government's misogyny crackdown? Oh, well, little 11-year-old boys on internet. That's the problem. That's why women can't sleep at night. That's why they can't get the number 328 bus for fear they're going to be stabbed or raped or kidnapped or assaulted at the very least. Oh, that's right. It's that little kid from adolescence who happened to enjoy a bit of an Andrew Tate video. I am not saying that Andrew Tate is a good and nice man. I think he's rotten. I think he's awful. But I think he's a product of a far deeper culture that they're still not really addressing, and they are not at all ever going to address what's at the heart of the huge spike in reported rapes, the huge spike in sexual assaults, the huge spike in harassments, which, believe it or not, seems to track the same line of growth, the same trajectory as inward migration from cultures that, well, I don't know, don't really regard women in the way that we do. You know, the ones that like to lob rocks at women for adultery, that kind of culture. But they're not going to say that, are they? They're not going to have that conversation. It doesn't matter that we are now the world leader in acid attacks. It doesn't matter that only 2 people have ever been prosecuted for FGM despite thousands of victims. It doesn't matter that the whole world knows about the grooming gangs now. No, nothing to see here. It's all Andrew Tate. They're scared. They're always scared. And the problem is they are using people as some sort of human shield. They are using the bodies of those people slain on Bondi Beach as a way of now having something to hide behind so they can now purportedly crack down on extreme anti-Semitism. But they had to wait for people to die first, and they're doing the same with the safety and innocence of little girls in this country. They're using them as a human shield. They're going to wait for the metrics. They're going to wait for the data. They're going to wait until it's irrefutable that there is a clear causal relationship between men from misogynistic cultures and women being treated terribly on the streets of Britain. And it doesn't matter that all these statistics that they're going to use to hide behind when they finally grow a pair and decide to stand up to this. Oh, it doesn't matter that every single statistic is a girl's life ruined or a Jew's life terrorised or somebody who's been mowed down in a shower of bullets, because they're weak, because they're spineless, because they lack a moral compass. Well, We're going to be getting into all of that and then some, so strap yourselves in. Here comes the roller coaster of truth, and if you want to get on board, you can skip the queue. Get a front seat. 03444 991000 is the number to call. It's your normal network rate. The fantastic Kieran, I can see him through the glass, poised, already holding the telephone to his ear, waiting to hear from you, to take down your details, vet you and make sure that you are suitable to be patched through to the studio. You can use that number as well to send me a WhatsApp message or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. You know how much I like a voice note. 87222 is the number if you'd rather send a text. And if that is more your thing, then you've got to write the word talk before you type out your message. OK, let's get on with getting on, because our first guest is the CEO of the Campaign Against Anti-Semitism, Gideon Falter. Gideon, great to have you on the programme.
Great to be here. Thank you.
I mean, it was, I suppose, a step in the right direction, wasn't it? When the Met Police and Greater Manchester Police got together, you know, safety in numbers and all that, and said, do you know what? When people shout globalise the intifada, we might do something about it. That's only about 2.5 years too late, am I right?
I mean, absolutely. This is sort of, you know, progress is progress and all of that. But come on. When people say that they want to globalize the intifada, it's not like they're being subtle. They're not speaking in code. This is a call for Jews to be killed. And it is a matter of immense shame and should be a resigning matter that it has taken them over 2 years of waiting until people actually did globalize the intifada, just as they said that they would all along, from Manchester to Sydney, dead Jews celebrating the Jewish religion. And now they've decided that actually maybe globalize the intifada should be stopped. But does that now mean that all of these chants, all of these marches are going to be dealt with properly? Because what about people chanting death, death to the IDF, that memorable chant brought to us courtesy of Glastonbury and beamed into our living rooms by the BBC? You know, does that chant now result in arrest? I actually tweeted the Met Police about this last night. There was a video of a whole group of people chanting death, death to the IDF. And I asked the Met, what are you doing about this? And they've actually just tweeted me back saying they arrested the leader of the chant. I said, well, what about all of the other people? So we wait for an answer on that. But meanwhile, we've got Jews across the UK saying it's great about globalize the intifada being cracked down on. But what about all these other things? Like, for example, you know, the marches themselves. When UKIP wanted to march through Tower Hamlets, the Met suddenly remembered that it had the power to ban marches, and it banned that march. Why 2 and a bit months after we've got a ceasefire all those thousands of miles away, why have we still got marches and hate mobs marching through London?
But this is the thing. I don't care, quite frankly. I do care, but I actually put second rung of my concerns what people are shouting on these marches. I don't think those marches should have taken place at all from the beginning, because I know exactly what the advice was to the government, and this is actually the previous government under Rishi Sunak, about who might have infiltrated or been part of those marches, what they were being used to try and germinate, which is a sense of anti-Semitism, which is an increased pressure, which is increased tensions, growing that hate, recruiting and grooming would-be terrorists. We know who's behind these marches. We know why they're growing in number. We know why they have simultaneously popped up in every town and every capital city in the West. That is some very sophisticated curation. That doesn't happen organically. So we know completely that these are infiltrated by foreign states, by terrorist organisations, and they should not have been allowed to take place. The response by the establishment, as per usual, pathetic, spineless, obsequious, lily-livered, weak, and at the cost of actual lives. We are blimmin' lucky in this country that we've not seen a Bondi Beach, and that is because we've got brilliant intelligence services. But it seems to me that this government, and frankly the government before, would rather stick their fingers in their ears and sing la 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 about advice and information being given to them by our intelligence agencies, and I don't know, kowtow to people who hate this country, who hate what we stand for, and who mean us harm. Why are they so scared?
You know, Alex, you are absolutely right. We are dodging bullets left, right and centre in this country, and we have been so damn lucky. 2 days ago, the Met Police charged 2 people who will, I'm sure, deny the charges, but they are charged with being members of Hezbollah and one of them preparing an act of terrorism. They had arrested them in April, but decided to let them roam the streets until 2 days ago. We have another case going on in the UK. Again, the trial continues. They will deny all charges of two people who are accused of acquiring assault rifles and hundreds of rounds of ammunition for a mass shooting of Jewish people. So we are damn lucky in this country that we have not had a Bondi Beach situation. And when it comes to, this question that you very, very rightly asked, what's going on under the surface? Who is actually, sort of stirring this stuff up? It's foreign states.
Yes.
And before the last election, the Labour Party, now the government, promised as part of their manifesto that they were going to ban Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps under the Terrorism Act. And this is an organization which even the Australian government has already proscribed under their equivalent of the Terrorism Act, because they can see that they have actually been behind many of the extremist and anti-Semitic attacks in their country, arson attacks, attempted killings, all sorts of things. So they've banned them. Why in the UK is Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps able to operate absolutely unfettered? Why is the Muslim Brotherhood, which is banned right across the Arab world, still allowed to operate here in the UK? We are an absolute laughing stock. And in the meantime, we've got these police forces like this absolute fiasco with West Midlands Police, where a police force in essentially, like you say, kowtowing to a mob, has decided that rather than enforce the law properly, they have decided to ban Israeli and Jewish football fans from attending an Aston Villa match and make up the evidence with ChatGPT and AI. They are now looking very red-faced, and they're going to be back in front of the Parliamentary Home Affairs Select Committee. But my God, it has come to this, that British justice, which was once renowned around the world, which was the envy of many democracies, we now have police forces which are making up evidence so that they can ban people of an inconvenient race or religion from entering their town. That's how far we've fallen. Bravo, globalize the Intifada is banned, but we have got a long way to go here.
We are in this country, and for some reason, this disease of the brain seems to affect a lot of European leaders. We are so terrified now of Islamism that we just let it do what it wants. Oh, the worst thing we could do is get a stick and poke it in the hornet's nest. They might all come out of their mosques with weapons then. I'm not saying at all that all Muslims are Islamists or that they all pose a danger to society. Clearly, that is not statistically the case, because if that was the case with millions of Muslims in this country, we would be in a very bad situation, and I count many Muslims as friends. But it is very clear that the greatest threat to safety and security in this nation is coming from Islamism and Islamic terrorism. And yet, on they go, letting the boats come in, regardless of who might be being shipped into the country, regardless of whose terrorist pockets we're lining with this awful trade and traffic of human cargo. We let these people stay in four-star hotels and we don't monitor them. Oh no, when we had someone come from Egypt who was actually thrown out of Egypt for making bombs, a Muslim terrorist, and he was put up in a hotel in London, next thing you know, he's wandering around Hyde Park raping a woman because, oh, clearly we had our eyes on him. We were monitoring what he was up to. They know what the risk is. If I know, if you know, if everyone listening knows, because we've lived through it. We've seen 9/11, we've seen 7/7, we've seen Ariana Grande, we've seen the attack on the synagogue. The list goes on and on and on. We know who the enemy is. We know who is hostile against us. We know who is posing that threat. If we know, the government knows, and they won't do anything. And whilst I do think it's a fiasco, what happened with West Midlands Police, and while I think it's all too little too late, quite frankly, for the Met Police and Greater Manchester Police to finally get their act together, what we need in this country is political leadership. It begins and ends at the top man standing behind a podium and for once upon a time in his wretched little life telling us some truths. It is beyond the point now that we should show tolerance towards intolerance. We have got to get our act together. Now we have a stupid little sixth form MP, the Your Party MP Zara Sultana, making it all about her, little narcissist that she is, standing outside in a keffiyeh scarf. Of course, that is basically today's Gucci handbag. Trying to generate a whole load of yeehaw hoo-ha around a 20-year-old who was in HMP Bronzefield on hunger strike because she was part of Palestine Action, a prescribed terrorist organisation. When organisations like that get prescribed, it takes a lot of pushing. It takes a lot of factual evidence, as we know, because these politicians are so lily-livered. They are prescribed for a reason. And as far as I can tell, this woman who holds a prestigious place in this country by sitting on a green bench is going out there cheering on a now terrorist organisation, upping the ante on a girl who's starving herself to death. It is sick.
Look, the Palestine Action debate is just absolutely unbelievable, isn't it? You've got an organization here which for years went around smashing things up, which publishes an online manual which they call the Underground Manual, which explains to people how to use burner phones, how to use a sledgehammer to cause maximum damage in a property, which lawyers to call when you get arrested, all of that kind of thing. They operate a cell structure and they go around doing this, and including a lot of Jewish-owned businesses. And the Jewish communities for a couple of years clamoring, please, can somebody do something about it? And we were looking at it in Campaign Against Anti-Semitism and saying, look, this is a criminal gang. The entire objective of everything they do is criminal damage. And if people get in their way, they hurt them. And nothing was done about it until suddenly the whole country woke up to footage of Palestine Action vandals smashing their way into RAF Bryce Norton and grounding this country's RAF jets. Now, at that point, it was decided to proscribe Palestine Action. We've all seen this footage that has come out of the trial, and obviously one must say that the trial is ongoing, and they deny all charges. But there is footage of somebody smashing a female police officer in the back, breaking her spine, giving her the most horrendous injury that nearly meant that she wouldn't walk. It sounds like I'm not sure if it's still ongoing or if it was for a period of time, needed help even getting dressed, washing herself. This was otherwise a fit and healthy police officer who, when on the floor, was smashed with a sledgehammer. Now, I'm really sorry, but if you commit a crime like that, whilst a member of an organization like Palestine Action, if you just decide that you're going to stop eating food at some point, that does not mean that you should suddenly be able to escape the entire criminal justice system. Because you know what? If that's how it worked, there'd be an awful lot of people
It doesn't
who would
make
stop
you
eating
hero.
their taxpayer meals, and they would just be let out of prison.
It's
straight
emotional
away.
blackmail. I'm sorry. Anyone who's committed an awful crime or associated with an awful gang who decides to go on hunger strikes says, I'm going to kill myself unless you agree with me. It is emotional blackmail. Fine. You don't want to eat? It's not on me. But finally, I just want to understand. So I want your opinion on this, because I don't have the answer. Is why are they so blimmin' scared? Why don't they stand up to Islamism? Why don't they do it? Because real fear is a 10-year-old girl in Manchester phoning the police saying, I want to go to a birthday party, can you come and protect me? That is real fear. What do they think is going to happen if they turned around tomorrow and said, we're going to crack down, we're going to monitor what is saying with extremist preachers and throw them out of the country? These misogyny lessons that little kids at school are now going to have, well, how about we take the exact same lessons into certain corners of certain communities who seem to have some pretty medieval views on women? Why are they so scared?
I think it's appeasement. And this used to be a country which does not do appeasement. And instead, over the last few decades, but particularly the last couple of years, we've got ourselves to a place where we don't deal with the people causing criminality in our country. We don't deal with the hate marches, for example, or the Islamist extremists. We instead deal with those who call them out. And unfortunately, it's been one scandal after another where we've seen this. We at Campaign Against Anti-Semitism spend a fortune every month getting people out of police custody for doing things like, and I kid you not, an Iranian man who holds a sign saying Hamas are terrorists, Niak Orbani. I think we've had him in and out of police custody, I think more than 15 times, because he holds a sign which literally just says what the law of the country is. The law of the UK says Hamas are terrorists, as a terrorist organization. He's been arrested for that. We've got another man, Mark Burberg, who holds a sign saying we stand with British Jews, hands behind his back, taken off to police custody. You know, this is the kind of policing where they let the people who are actually posing a threat to Niak and Mark, those people get off scot-free, whereas Niak and Mark are carted off because they are the inconvenience. And I saw it when I had my incidents. You know, when for example, I was told by the side of a Palestine demonstration, listen, you are quite openly Jewish. If you stand here, we're worried you're going to antagonize people. So basically get out or we'll arrest you for being openly Jewish in the vicinity of a Palestine march. So the reason for the reason behind this appeasement, but the reason for this sort of scared approach, I think is twofold. One, you know, Islamists are scary. They are. You know, they commit terrorist attacks. They are, you know, they are linked with all sorts of violent groups like the Muslim Brotherhood. It's scary to have to deal with them. But guess what? The bad news is, if you're the police or if you're the security services, your job is to deal with those people and keep us safe. And I think there's a second part of it as well, which is that for years and years, they've been telling us, don't worry, everything's under control. Everything's under control. We're going to do lots of integration and community cohesion, and everybody's going to, you know, get along together. And that's fine. But that's all the carrot. Along the same time, you can't have carrot without stick. And there's been no stick whatsoever. So I remember in, I think, 2014 or 2015, Eric Pickles was then the community secretary. He sent a letter to mosques warning against radical preaching. Fast forward to October 7th, 2023, and there are people in mosque pulpits around the country standing up, giving absolutely blood-curdling sermons saying October 7th is the best thing since sliced bread. And you know, we at Campaign Against Anti-Semitism are looking at privately prosecuting some of these people. We're left writing to the Charity Commission saying, these mosques are all charities. Are you going to do something about this? It's horrendous. And I think that the reason that they don't deal with it is partly because they're so invested in telling us that everything's under control and everything's all right. It breaks their whole narrative to admit that they're wrong. And they've just had to admit they're wrong with this globalized intifada thing 2 years later.
They have, and at the cost of multiple lives as well. Gideon, thank you ever so much for coming on the programme. Right, we're going to take a short break now. Keep your thoughts coming in. 03444991000 is the number to call, or indeed the number to send a WhatsApp. 87222 is the number if you'd like to send a text message. After the break, we're going to be talking about and picking up on what Gideon was saying about getting the wrong people and throwing them in clink instead of the wrong uns. The man who was jailed over an anti-immigrant post that was viewed 33 times. Make that make sense. We're discussing that after this.
across the UK.
Do you know what's going to really get Elon Musk all stirred up? This story. In fact, I think he's been stirred up about it already, because if you want to know the league tables in which the UK are top of the pops, the things where we are #1 in the world, they don't tend to be the things that we should be proud of. No, we're #1 in Europe when it comes to the amount of rapes. Great. Fantastic. Someone pop the corks on the champagne. We're also seemingly, increasingly, topping the charts when it comes to people being chucked in clink for social media posts. And here we go, it's happened again. A man has been jailed for inciting racial hatred in 2 anti-immigrant social media posts. OK, what he wrote in the posts is not good. In fact, it's pretty horrific. Saying let's gang together and start the slaughter. They should torch migrant hotels first and then head to MPs' houses and Parliament. Yeah, that is definitely deeply unpleasant and, frankly, inciting violence. But the thing is, the posts were viewed 33 times. And in the words of his barrister, they were essentially the impotent rantings of a socially isolated man. Well, indeed. Let's speak now to Connie Shaw, spokeswoman for the Free Speech Union. Connie, no one is going to read what he put in those posts and give him a round of applause and a rosette. You cannot say things like that. You should not say things like that. But should you be thrown into jail for something like that? And especially when only 33 people happened to see these posts, and it just so happened that the person who decided to rat you into the police has an axe to grind with you.
Yes, Alex. I mean, like you said, these posts really were quite horrific. However, the judge said that they had the potential to actually cause violence. But like you said, they were only viewed 33 times, so that is disputable. But having the potential to cause violence is very different from actually being likely to cause imminent violence. And that's the test in the US, the Brandenburg test, where speech is lawful unless it incites violence. And that test is known as the Brandenburg test from that case. And the speech has to both be intended, which these tweets were, but both intended and likely to cause imminent unlawful action. So that's where, when we talk about the prison crisis we have, the reality is that we have thrown a keyboard warrior, essentially, into prison for 18 months for something he said online, when we need everything we need to do everything we can to clear prison spaces. And obviously David Lammy at the moment, he's claiming that in order to speed up the judiciary process, that he's now trying to get rid of a lot of jury trials, which most speech offences are dealt with. This guy did plead guilty to inciting racial hatred, and therefore he wasn't tried by a jury, he was tried by a judge. You are twice as likely to be acquitted if you're heard by a jury, and 75% of people who plead not guilty and are tried by juries do get acquitted. But there's also no evidence relating to, you know, the conversation you're having with Gideon and this news about criminalising the words globalise the intifada. There isn't really evidence to suggest that attacks on minority groups are less likely by cracking down on speech. I mean, even some people argue, it is basically an upside down argument, that free speech caused the Holocaust, essentially, by allowing people to be so anti-Semitic. That led to the horrific persecution of Jews. But actually in the Weimar Republic, anti-Semitism was really cracked down on. There were multiple leading Nazis who were imprisoned for things that they were saying, but that allowed them to be painted as martyrs. And people, there was even one newspaper that really said, you know, Hitler has been silenced. And that allowed horrific people like the Nazis to be elevated. And of course, when the Nazis got into power, they then really did crack down on free speech. There isn't evidence to suggest that attacks on minorities, especially not in this case, when only 33 people saw it, will be reduced by cracking down on free speech. Of course, that doesn't mean that what he said wasn't awful, but Toby Young, Lord Young, our founder and General Secretary at the Free Speech Union, he's doing a review of our speech laws for Kemi Badenoch. The Free Speech Union, we're likely to recommend something like the First Amendment, the Brandenburg test in the UK, so that only speech that is likely and intended to. So this guy probably wouldn't have failed that test had we had the First Amendment in this country.
But the problem is, even then, we will still have a two-tier application of this, in the same way that it's taken them 2 years to determine that shouting globalise it, intifada, kill the IDF, or death to the IDF, whatever it may be, from the river to the sea, that might be stirring up racial hatred and inciting violence. Well, of course it is. And yet, when it comes to chucking people into prison, it tends to only be those people who, yes, their words might be ugly, yes, what they're saying might be horrific, but it tends to be what they are talking about is a visceral, passionate reaction to big issues facing the country that the government are abjectly refusing to do anything about.
Yes, we do obviously see a skew to one side of politics when it comes to people who are persecuted for their speech. Of course, Jamie Michael, one of our biggest cases, he posted a 12-minute video on Facebook calling for people to democratically try to stop illegal immigration. He was reported to the police by a Labour staffer. And he was remanded in custody for 17 days, charged with stirring up racial hatred as well. And then he was acquitted in 17 minutes by a jury. If he was not heard by a jury, we have no idea whether Jamie...
So, hold on, he said he'd had to democratically try?
Yes, he was calling for his local community to go to local politicians, to councillors, to their MPs to protest against illegal immigration. He falsely believed, like many people, that Axel Rudabakana was an illegal immigrant because obviously his identity wasn't released until much later after the attack. But of course, people who haven't seen this video, because it's quite hard to find on Facebook, the worst thing that Jamie said was that some of these radicalised immigrants are scumbags and psychopaths. And of course, like many things you've been talking about today, there is vast evidence that some of these people are what I would describe as psychopaths and scumbags. But it's odd, this sort of charge of racial hatred. It's this strange perception that if you're talking about migrants, you're automatically racist, when there are people of lots of different races coming into the country. It's not necessarily to do with their race at all. It could be about their culture. You know, many of the people who do come illegally may be white themselves.
Right, and it's funny, isn't it? They choose this exact moment to start pushing for the Islamophobia law again. And what I think to this is, if you manage to crack down on the problem members of that community, if you went after the Islamists, if you decided you weren't going to tolerate intolerance anymore, and you went after the radical preachers and the mosques that were stirring up hatred and violence, and if you cracked down on those people who wanted to import into this country misogynistic values, racism against Jews, anti-Christian views, if you actually went after the wrong ones, there wouldn't be a need for Islamophobia laws, because no one would be worried about Islam anymore. It just beggars belief. Connie, thank you ever so much. Fantastic having you back on the programme. Connie Shaw from the Free Speech Union. We're going to be taking a short break now. When we come back, guess what? We thought, basically, we should just call this whole show. Finally, let's have a good old rant about the fact that this government, like every other government, just chucks women and girls under a bus, because it doesn't matter. If the Supreme Court have ruled that men can't just put on a dress, magically become women and then demand to go in toilets and changing rooms, oh no, Bridget Phillips is still sitting on the guidance of how that should be applied. Never you mind when we've got statistics of how many women and girls have suffered at the hand of men going into their single-sex spaces. Never you mind watching a young woman get pummeled into a paste by a male-born man in a boxing ring. Oh no, that doesn't matter. We should wait for the data. We're going to be digging more into this just after the break.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back. Now, we finally could raise a toast to the women who campaigned hard for women to be, I don't know, recognised as women, for crying out loud. The Supreme Court made the ruling that, guess what, sex was based on biology, not on made-up terms and pronouns and trendy little movements and activism from people who want to pretend they are something they're not. And yet Bridget Phillipson has sat on that for months now. She refuses, and this is what I was saying earlier, the buck stops with the politicians. They lead this country. The clue is in the word lead, OK? Govern, government. It's up to them to make a stand, to do what is right. The favourite line from Labour politicians, because it's the right thing to do. Well, do something, Bridget Phillipson, about the Supreme Court ruling, because it staggers me that we're now having to witness a court case, Sex Matters charity and campaign group taking legal action against the City of London, against Hampstead Heath's rules on transgender bathing. Now, this is despite that landmark Supreme Court ruling in April. No, the City of London still want to allow men who say that, well, I don't know, if they swim in the men's pool that they're going to drown or something. It's ridiculous. It is ridiculous. Get back in your swimming lane. Let's speak now to Heather Binning, who's the founder of the Women's Rights Network. Heather, we're just not going to be allowed to win, are we? Because whatever we come up with, whatever we fight back as women, saying we don't feel like our integrity, our innocence, our security, our privacy should be mortgaged at the cost to some sort of movement where, look, of course there are genuinely dysphoric people, but at the end of the day, this is not what this is about. For years we have had genuinely dysphoric people. This is something else. And here we go. The Supreme Court ruling hasn't made a difference. And we've heard in the evidence given to the High Court that, frankly, the admission rules for Hampstead Heath ponds treat individual women less favourably than men because an individual woman is at greater risk of suffering the detriment of her privacy, dignity or safety being compromised than an individual man. And yet we're still having to go to court over and over again. Why?
Hit the nail on the head, Alex. Thanks for having me on this afternoon. It's absolutely astonishing. In the case of the Hampstead ponds, it's a council run, so it's the City of London. This is just one of hundreds across the land, council provision that is not abiding by the law. There, often the excuse is the wait for this guidance, as you pointed out, is the government have been sitting on. Who understands why on earth they've been sitting on it? It's not as if they're going to be changing the law in a couple of weeks. So there's no reason to. The City of London are breaking the law at Hampstead, with Hampstead ponds, and it makes one wonder how many other laws are councils breaking if they're not wishing to abide by this. And the Supreme Court ruling, which was, absolutely categorical. If you're offering a women's space, it has to be a women's space, because allowing one man in it for whatever reason, dysphoric or not, means it's no longer a women's space.
What alarms me, and you actually used the word there, if you are offering a women's space, it should be a women's space. What alarms me is the big push now is going to be turning everything unisex, and then we lose all forms of women's spaces.
Well, that's right. They could well. Perhaps that's what they're hoping for. They might end up doing. However, what we know, we've recently brought out a report on leisure centre provision, where the single-sex changing facilities have been turned into mixed sex. Now, this is not, or it's promoted as not being about inclusion. It's economics. It's cheaper to provide a mixed sex changing village. But the rise in crimes, and crimes do occur in these places, we know that predators seek out the place where they can predate quite comfortably and not raise too much suspicion. And it's horrendous. Women are subject to voyeurism and sexual attack, a whole range of sexual assaults starting voyeurism.
And that's the thing. It doesn't matter how many stats clock up with women who have actually been physically assaulted, whose lives will be immeasurably changed thereafter, because it does change one. If you've been raped or sexually assaulted, it changes your whole worldview and how you go about living your life. It radically alters your stress levels permanently. And yet, oh no, the poor little baby who got upset because Sainsbury's has a Christmas card which said, this Christmas I'm identifying as a Grinch. And of course, someone somewhere, a transgender journalist, has decided this is transphobic. Well, that's it. She can't go to the shops anymore. Better not go down Sano's to get the Christmas turkey in case she sees that. Wow, she's going to have to hide behind the sofa thereafter. It is pathetic and it is ridiculous. I mean, this whole game of I'm identifying as has become a joke, largely by the very people pushing that narrative. It's one thing when someone said, look, I'm a man, but I identify as a woman, but it's escalated into every single pronoun for every letter of the alphabet. I now think I'm a dog. Little kids at school being treated like whatever animal they decide they are that day. So you can't, you can't help but create a creedic open goalpost for this concept of I'm identifying as, and nobody, I'm afraid, gets to suddenly dominate language. No one suddenly gets to decide what the word woman means. No one suddenly gets to have full ownership of the word identify.
Yeah, right again. I mean, it's a humorous Christmas card. And I feel so sorry for these people that have complained about it, the few people who knows who they are, because they must live such a miserable existence if they can't even take, a little bit of laugh. We all have jokes told about us and join in the fun from time to time. I have to say that the response from Sainsbury's is a complete double standards. We've written to the chief executive, and we've got a campaign going at the moment against the supermarkets because they have inclusive policies. So we're trying to get that change. We are trying to encourage these organisations, including Sainsbury's, who have had the highest rate of sexual assaults in their toilets and changing rooms of any other supermarket. And we've written to them to try and get them to change that. No, they're not doing that. But one quick complaint and they'll take a humorous Christmas card off the shelves.
It's ridiculous.
It's double standards, and it's quite appalling.
And the thing is, it's not people being lily-livered and actually being genuinely upset by these things when it comes to identity politics. It's a way of bullying. It's actually a way of trying to oppress somebody else. This whole sort of like, oh, you've offended me, so I'm now going to report you. The person's not. It's synthetic offence. It is a form of manipulation. It is a form of fascism, I would say. Quite frankly, if we're going to start getting upset about identity politics, I'm pretty upset to learn that the BBC decided that this old living skelly bob, the oldest living black person in Britain, found in Beachy Head or whatever it is, turned out to be blonde-haired and blue-eyed. Oh, better not be the way I'm coloured. I shouldn't exist anymore in my own culture. Let's talk now about the government's wisecrack brilliant plan to try and prevent misogyny, which is sending boys as young as 11 on anti-misogyny courses if they show harmful behaviour. Great. That's going to work wonders, isn't it?
It's going to work wonders. It's not. I think it's 20 million. It's not, in the greater scheme of things, that's not a lot of money to tackle something which, there is a problem. But I would say it's one of mutual respect between men and women that there's a big problem with, and that needs to be tackled. I know that Kemi Badenoch has said we need to stop it's about migration from people with different cultures to our own. Unfortunately, we have a misogynistic culture in this country at the moment, which we can see from the things that we've just talked about. They're all about, women's rights. Oh, goodness, you're hardly able to say women's rights now because that's apparently a transphobic dog whistle. But women are second-class citizens in sports, in changing rooms, in leisure centres. It's all about, we stand up and say we're not happy with this, we get put down. Now, children are not to blame for this. And, it's another area where we're putting the pressure on the schools to fix it. I don't think schools can fix this. There needs to be much a much more concerted effort across a range of issues. So the social media, there's the porn industry.
Yeah.
That's, young children are seeing this. Now, can we not do something to address that? So they're not seeing women being subject to, cartoon sexual images.
But this is what I've been saying for years now, Heather. We're getting grip and drop of legislation now. Oh, well, we should teach kids about porn at school, that the porn that they're watching doesn't represent real life. Ooh, we need to bring in something that abolishes the rough sex defence in court when a man has throttled a woman to death in the bedroom and says, oh, well, she liked it like that. We better get rid of that. Ooh, we need to get rid of videos that are showing X, Y. How about, here's a genius plan. How about you pull the plug on the unregulated, citizen-generated porn websites, the multi-billion-dollar industrialized sexual abuse, because nobody knows the provenance of those videos, whether that woman or indeed man has consented to that video being made or shown online. In fact, when a court case was brought against Visa for the monetization of a video of somebody's rape being put on one of these porn websites, and Visa said, well, you better do an audit of all your content, that particular website had to remove 88% of all of their videos for showing some sort of barbaric, dehumanizing or paedophilic content. And it's very easy. You just go after those websites because it can be done. Oh, no, people just go to the dark web anyway. No, they won't. No, they won't. The government has the ability to pull levers, and yet again, it is just too scared to do so. Instead, they want to mess about around the edges, tripping over some little tweak they can make when the pressure gets a little bit too high, when one other woman is attacked or somebody else is extorted or abused. Yet another statistic. People matter here. They know what the right thing is to do. They just refuse to do it.
Yeah, I think we ought to say, I'll stress this is about mutual respect between the sexes. And I think bigging up and seeing a lot more from the good men. There are a lot of good men and good boys out there. And too often, I hate the idea of young male children being labelled misogynistic. I hate labels. I've been having labels attached to myself. But this label that then means, well, you're bad because you're misogynistic. Now, they might just be trying things out. There's a whole range of issues, but can we not pick up some good male role models?
Yes, I agree.
Some of the bad messaging that is out there.
I agree. In fact, a whole part of tackling misogyny is to stop bashing men over their heads so much. Brilliant to have you on the programme, Heather. It's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you ever so much. And if you want to be part of the conversation, it is your opportunity after the break. So dial this number, 0344 499 1000. It's your normal network rate. I'm looking forward to hopefully speaking to some of you after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, right, messages, calls, voice notes, a lot of it. Reg just said, a great opening monologue. Oh, thank you. You've got me revved up now for my journey home. Vroom, vroom. Let's hope that is true. Drive safely. This activism has corrupted almost all levels of society. We are lost unless we stand up and be counted if we love our country, says Gary in Liverpool. I totally agree. You can't go along with it being, I don't want to be the one to say anything. Oh, I don't want to upset the apple cart. Because the problem is that, you know, the road to good intentions is paved with people doing absolutely blimmin' nothing. Right, someone else has said nothing will get any better until hopefully reform win. Well, that's true. And this says, relax, enjoy your new home in the Cotswolds and forget anything else. It's not worth it. Happy Christmas. Unfortunately, I can't. My job is to get in this booth and follow the news within an inch of its life and rant about it. So forgetting ain't too easy. But I tell you what, where I am in the world, it's kind of easy to feel slightly insulated against the problems that big cities are facing. Let's have a listen to a voice note from Kev.
Obsequious. That's a new word. Thanks for that, Alex. You've educated me. Look, I've said it before and I'll say it again. These marches need banning. And I know that goes against so many people's opinions on free speech. And I just believe you should only be allowed to march for things that are relative to this country, not things to someone else, because we can't change a so-called war in Israel. There's no war going on there anyway. We know it's not that. They're hate marches. And that's why. That's an easy reason for them to be stopped. And don't give me the rubbish that, people are entitled to free speech, because you get bloody locked up for free speech these days. That's okay. You're allowed to lock people up for silly little tweets, but yet people can go around and make everyone feel uncomfortable and scared in the streets by delivering these hate marches. It's all wrong.
Exactly. No, the thing for me is they had the intelligence of the sort of people, organisations and hostile states infiltrating and curating these marches. That enough should make them plausible for being banned. That alone is sufficient to say no more. Let's speak now to Carl, who's in Liverpool. Hi, Carl.
Hi, Alex. You okay?
Yeah, I'm all right. How you doing, my love?
I'm just angry. I just feel so angry at all these, like this teacher thing. We need to teach boys about misogyny. If that's not getting done at home, then it shouldn't be up to teachers. I'm sorry, parents should be getting a grip of their kids and just saying to them, you do not do this, you do not say this. That's where it starts. My children, my three boys, of different ages, they know not to say anything back talk to the mum. She only has to give them a look, and to be honest, she gives me a look and I do the same. But we should be bringing kids up to respect women no matter what, and that starts at home, not at school. It's not up to teachers to raise our kids, and if parents can't be bothered to tell their boys what's right from wrong, but we're living in a world now, Alex, where young girls are getting scantily dressed up to be older. Yeah. I mean, what in what planet? I mean, I grew up in the 80s, and women weren't walking around like this.
So this is the thing. Look, I totally agree with you. You know, you can call me modern-day Mary Whitehouse if you like, because I see this from both sides. We live in a hypersexualised culture where pornography has been totally normalised to the extent that, let's teach kids about it at school. What are you talking about? It's against the law for someone under the 18 to be looking at pornographic material. Don't teach them about it at school, for crying out loud. You don't teach a kid how to, I don't know, inject heroin or light up a spliff, do you? No. So this approach has been totally wrong, and popular culture is a huge part of this. You know, when we allow little girls to glorify some of these singers, the Cardi B's and the Nicki Minaj, I've seen some of those music videos, they're blimmin' horrific. In my day, people were shocked when the Spice Girls turned up with mini skirts on. They look like Bratz dolls, do you know what I mean? They look totally harmless now compared to the sort of pornographic material being pumped into our children's eyes and ears. And yet government after government don't do anything. They go with the flow. And do you know what happens? This is where we end up. And thank you so much, Carl, for bringing up your boys properly. More men like that, please. Let's all be a little bit more Carl. OK, going to take a break now. Don't go anywhere. Lots more to come.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back to the show. That's been a lively first hour. I knew today when I looked at what was in the news, and I messaged the beautiful and brilliant Jodie, my producer, and I said to her, Jodes, mate, we're going to go big, we're going to go hard. This is exactly the sort of thing I want to get my teeth into and rant about, because I've been thinking about this. I've been thinking of the weakness of our political establishment, how fearful they are. Yeah, there's a reason why in the West now the strong man is rising into power, or perhaps the strong woman. The so-called fascists, the populists, the dangerous ones. Oh, I don't know, the ones who might have like slung around an insult in the playground 50 years ago. There's a reason why it is happening. And it's because leadership in the West, and particularly in Western Europe, has been so weak, so rudderless, so pathetic for so long that we have essentially now reached the 11th hour of the crises that seem to be facing our civilization, whether that be through open-door immigration, violence, crimes against women, hypersexualization, you name it. It is entirely down to a political establishment who have decided they didn't just drop the ball, they decided they didn't want to catch it in the first place. Oh, they thought they could just go along and be the, hashtag be kind brigade. Aren't I nice? Aren't I open-minded? Aren't I progressive? Which, you know what? A lot of this stuff hasn't been progressive at all. It's been regressive. It's been regressive, mixing together lots of cultures, balkanizing them, because there has been no effort for integration, because, I don't know, integrating people around one homogenized culture is surely a nasty nationalistic thing to do. And yet, when we talk about, let's say, colonisation, right, colonialism, and what the Brits did when they arbitrarily drew borders around, blots of land in Africa and said, oh, right, you're now called Kenyan. And they suddenly go, oh, right, that is why there is still post-election violence and intertribal warfare, because all of those people weren't Kenyans. You just invented a country and forced them all to live together. When we get battered over the head for, taking over countries and bringing our whiskey and our Christianity and all the rest of it, why do they think in the modern age all of a sudden that's going to work? If it didn't work historically, if we know that countries that have torn themselves apart and had to impose, or didn't have to, but did impose monstrous policies such as apartheid, because, it's quite difficult creating a rainbow nation, and yet the one successful rainbow nation on planet Earth, the one that's probably got more ethnicities and more different nationalities, that does actually tend to consolidate around a homogenized idea of national identity, is Israel. And that's the one that we should, go about willfully kicking if we want to be on the right side of the fashionable trends of the day. It makes no sense. You'll be pleased to know, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I spotted something online earlier. Look at this. Look at this. Hey, it's a post by the UN, because 18th of December, everybody, is better than Christmas Day. You don't have to wait another week before you pop your crackers and celebrate, because today is hashtag Migrants Day. Woohoo! I'm so glad we have got Migrants Day, because we must now join in the celebrations of the contributions of 300 million migrants around the world. There you go. Brilliant. OK, right, let us speak now to Simon Johnson, former CEO of the Jewish Leadership Council. Simon, great to have you on the programme. OK, so good. We've got Sir Mark Rowley and Sir Stephen Watson, the respective heads of the Met Police and the Greater Manchester Police, yesterday saying that activists chanting the slogan, "Globalise the Intifada," will face arrest. Well, hey, fantastic. The police seem to have gotten their act together. But this has all been happening in a vacuum, mainly because of a complete lack of political leadership. It should not have taken this long for that to be criminalised. And quite frankly, I still maintain very firmly that when we knew that these protests were infiltrated and partly curated by hostile states and terrorist organisations, they should have been outright banned. And yet nothing happened. Why?
Good afternoon to you, Alex. Well, lots in that question, so I'm not quite sure where to start. But let me start with globalising intifada. That has always been illegal in my view. It's an incitement to racial hatred. And the reason for that is because the Intifada, in the context of the Israel-Palestine dispute, refers to a violent and non-violent, but violent uprising that involves suicide bombings, stabbings, shootings, and rammings. So when people say globalize the Intifada, they are calling for stabbings, suicide bombings, shootings, and rammings to be shown all around the world. And unfortunately, we have seen over the last few weeks that people have taken that up in Manchester at Heaton Park and in Australia on Bondi Beach. I have been under no doubt for 2.5 years what that has meant. It has meant that it is a call for murderous terrorism against Jews. And it is entirely right now, better late than never, that the police are deciding that they are going to take action against it because it is illegal and it always has been illegal.
Why is it, though, as well? I mean, I've noticed it on X just during the advert break that there's now calls for, and a lot of politicians have repeated this, well, it's not just the Jewish community who have to live in fear, it's the Muslim community too. Why do they always have to balance it out like that? Because to me, it seems very simple. If someone had the cojones to crack down on violent Islamism, it would actually very much help our Muslim community as well, because I think incidences of Islamophobia would probably significantly tumble if people weren't given reasons to be phobic about Islam.
Look, I think that racism is appalling against any community, but unfortunately, and there's no doubt about this, at this moment there is specific, targeted and regular racist hatred being expressed against Jewish people. Now, I'm not going to go into equivalence and say that you have to balance it because there's racism against others. I'm a member of the Jewish community, and I know that members of our community are fearful to gather in public. They are fearful to go into certain places in central London, and they are fearful because on these marches, there are far too many people calling for intifada, calling for the death of Jews, and that is creating a climate of fear, and you can understand it when you've seen 16 people murdered in Bondi Beach, 2 people murdered at Heaton Park, and a series of violent firebombings, shootings, attempted stabbings, and all sorts at Jewish communities all around the world. So I'm afraid that is our focus at the moment. There is a call for murderous terrorism against Jews, and we need protection from our political leadership against the way that people are interpreting that and taking action against us.
I guess who's been dragged into the mire yet again for getting it wrong? Oh, that's right, the custodians of truth, the bastions of accuracy, the BBC, who are now being hit with allegations of bias yet again after describing the Intifada, the Palestinian uprisings in which thousands of people were killed, as largely unarmed and popular. Why? Why do they do this? There have been complaints from Jewish readers, rightly so, and so they have updated the terminology now on the BBC website, which explain the origin of the word intifada. Oh, maybe they'd like to crack on with jihad as well while they're at it. But apparently they've now said that intifada has been regarded by some as a call for violence against Jewish people. Why can't they just come out and say, do you know what? Intifada is being used repeatedly to try and stir up hatred and aggression against Israel, against Jewish people, against Zionists, and frankly, against anybody who doesn't go along with the whole pro-Palestine shtick.
We've got a real problem with the BBC, I'm afraid. If you remember, straight after October the 7th, they refused to call Hamas terrorists. In fact, even now, they refer to that murderous organisation by some mealy-mouthed expression. So it's no surprise to me that there are people within the BBC who refuse to accept that intifada is a call for murderous terrorism against Jewish people. Once it exported out of Israel-Palestine, where what it meant was a violent terrorist uprising against Israelis. And the BBC has had to appear before Parliament. They've lost senior leaders because of an independent report that found that they were biased and inherently biased against Israel. So I'm afraid they are repeat offenders. And I am very disappointed every time that this happens with the BBC, because I keep hoping that they're going to get it right and they're going to apply balance and fairness, and they're doing none of the sort. And this latest attempt to try and whitewash and soft soap the meaning of intifada, in my view, is disgraceful.
But it's a sort of, it is, as Elon Musk would call it, a mind virus, which seems to exist across anybody with any sort of public platform or position of power, bar, of course, the sensible people here in Talk Towers. I mean, there's a thing on X today about big bollards need to be put all around the Birmingham Christmas market in case of hostile vehicles. Hostile vehicles. Oh, right, that's it. A milk float with a hangover wakes up one day and accidentally drives itself into the middle of a crowd full of people enjoying a bit of festive mulled wine. You know, every time I look at the news, it seems to be Germany has foiled yet another terror plot. Same thing now in Poland, and Poland has a far better record than we do when it comes to open border immigration. Lord only knows how many terror plots have been foiled on British soil over the past few months, coming to a head, no doubt, around the time of the festive period. And here we go. We found out that a group of men believed to have been travelling to Bondi Beach were rammed by an unmarked police car during a counter-terror operation near Sydney. Everywhere now, Islamic State calling the Bondi Beach killings a source of pride. Terrorism didn't go anywhere. Terrorism didn't suddenly die during the war on terror. It didn't just give up, bury itself in the sand dunes of Afghanistan as the Taliban took over. Oh no, terrorism's very well and healthy, thank you very much. It's being imported into our countries at a rate of knots, illegally, legally, on television screens, on internet, and yet we seem to have now taken the route of not fighting terror like we did in the last century, but pretending it doesn't exist anymore.
Terrorism is indiscriminate, and unfortunately there is a sad record of all sorts of public events being attacked by terrorists. There was vehicles driven into Christmas markets in Germany, if you remember, a couple of years ago. And I'm afraid that, you know, when we at the JLC used to organise Hanukkah in the square, we had to have very heavy security around it, just simply in Trafalgar Square, to allow people in safely and to protect people against the threats that we've received. There is no question that there are many, many ongoing and realistic threats against the Jewish community and against others. And it's very, very important that those are taken seriously. But remember how we started this. We started by talking about words. People will say globalized intifada is just words, but there's no question that we have seen that these words have consequences. They have a dire impact, and we've seen what globalized the intifada means only in the last few days by the indiscriminate shooting of innocent Jewish people celebrating a festival on a beach in Australia. And it beggars belief that there were people who apparently were trying to go back and potentially do something else on Bondi Beach. And it really is just making it clear to us that this threat is raising and raising and raising. And sadly, although it's general and most of the population could be at risk of terrorism, there is a real and present danger against Jews and Jewish communities at the moment. And that's what we need protection from words and action.
I totally agree. Thank you ever so much, Simon Johnson, former CEO of the Jewish Leadership Council. Of course, you know, the threat isn't just against the Jews. It starts with the Jews. But it's against all of us at this point. I've warned a long time presenting on this channel about the huge risk that terrorism now poses to this country and all across the West, with various people from intelligence agencies, particularly in the United States, saying it's not a matter of if, it is now a matter of when, for some sort of coordinated October the 7th mass casualty event. It is why UK police forces have a code word, Operation Plato. That's when they think there's going to be a mass casualty event. Why? Because the intelligence tells us that it is coming. And when that day comes to pass, the blood is on the hands of all these governments. Successive prime ministers have done nothing to block up those illegal routes coming in, who's not monitoring the comings and goings of people who have broken into the country, who have done nothing about the curation of these hate marches, who have decided, rather than stand up to violence and terrorism and extremism, it's easier just to pretend it doesn't exist and will it all away because they're weak. Makes me sick, it really does. Got some breaking news for you now. There's been another release of images related to Jeffrey Epstein. The latest drop has been made by the Democrats again on the House Oversight Committee, which obtained them from the Epstein estate. Redactions have been made before their release. That is ahead of the US government's deadline to share all of its material by tomorrow. Kind of think it's a bit pukey, frankly, the Democrats wanting to play politics with the whole Epstein stuff. But there you go. That's my opinion. Let's just publish the damn lot of it, would you? All right, we're going to be taking a short break now, but when I come back, I'm joined by the fantastic Robert Bates from the Centre for Migration Control, because there's a heck of a lot to rant about, including net migration surging, 100,000 more asylums now making claims, asylum seekers. Then, of course, we can have a good old laugh about the UN Day of Migrants, whatever it is today, as well as the fact that, did you know the British Museum is now sending artefacts abroad to help countries decolonise? I tell you what, there's part of me sympathetic with the old Elgin marbles going back to Greece, but it's going to be the thin end of a wedge, believe me when I say that, and a lot of countries aren't going to look after their artefacts very well at all. It's all a load of wokery, isn't it? Let's discuss that and everything else with Robert Bates after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Guys, you'll be pleased to know I got a little bit creative during the advert break and I invented a song. So good was my creation that Robert Bates here thought that it was actually a real song.
Oh, I thought you were about to ask me to do a rendition of it.
Did you not remember the words? Should we do it together?
Some of them.
Because today, can I just say, Thursday, 18th of December, is Migrants' Day! Happy, 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 happy Migrants' Day! Migrants' Day! Hooray! Happy, 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 happy Migrants' Day! It's Happy Migrants' Day! Yay! Woo. There we go. Because we should all be happy, shouldn't we? We should celebrate the fact that net migration is to rise by 100,000. Woohoo! More migrants!
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that is entirely on the Labour Party's shoulders. And actually what we're seeing here is this explosion, this increase, is going to be predominantly driven by asylum seekers who the Migration Advisory Committee, the government sort of immigration watchdog, have now come out and said are unambiguously huge fiscal costs at every stage of the life. So we're actually entering a new era of migration into Britain on Migration Day, where actually we're seeing us eschew freedom of movement. That was one stage. We've had the health and social care sector stage, and we're now entering the phase of asylum seekers. And as all the data suggests, this is something where integration is poor, assimilation is poor, social outcomes are dire, and then the fiscal costs are huge as well. So it really is a cause for celebration today.
It is. Happy, 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 happy Migrants' Day.
In my head all day now, that.
I know, I love it. I really should just become a composer of jingles. But it's absolutely ridiculous. That is going to jump in the medium term of 204,000 to 300,000. They could quite easily, they being the government, they being whoever, could easily stop the boats crossing the channel. I love the fact that today, in the whole sort of, countering misogyny, Jess Phillips has proudly written, this government has recognised the safety of women is now a matter of national emergency. We can declare a national emergency and prevent sexual predators from crossing the channel in dinghies. I'm not saying they're all sexual predators, but come on!
Disproportionately they are, of course, and that is the very important fact that Jess Phillips did not mention. They dare not mention that fact. It's a very, very clear empirical, statistical fact, and it's something that this Labour government just are doing all they can to not talk about because it just makes them feel uncomfortable, and therefore women and girls are going to, unfortunately, again, be sacrificed on the altar of the liberal ideas of this government.
I made a documentary about the correlation between the safety of women and girls, attacks by nationality, which I did with the late, great Peter Whittle. I was going to call him Sir Peter Whittle then. I've sort of posthumously knighted him. He deserves it.
He deserves it.
But I made it with the New Culture Forum, and we analyse the statistics across Europe. And get this, put this in your on your birthday cake and light it on Happy, Happy Migrants' Day. In Frankfurt, in Germany, 64% of all sex attacks committed by foreign nationals. In Finland, the statistic for the number of native Finns who rape women is 3.3 per 10,000. Afghans, 138 per 10,000. I don't even know what a factor of that is. Like, what is 3.3 into 130? That's a lot.
That's massively
a factor of 30 or 3,000 times. I don't know. I can't do maths, as we all know. We've established that. In France, rapes in Paris, which have been committed by people who don't hold a French passport. Do you know what the percentage is of overall rapes in Paris by people who don't hold a French passport?
Is it about half, or is it about...
Oh, we should be so lucky. 77%. 77%. And in the UK, and these are our statistics in 2024, and this is based upon incarcerations, because, of course, we don't really collect or collate statistics of crime by nationality. No, nothing to see here. We can't do that. Waste of resources. But we do collate data on the nationality of people in prison. And in 2024, it turns out that of those who have been imprisoned for sexual offences, 3.5 times more likely to have been committed by a foreign national. Happy, 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 happy Migrants'
Day!
And
there's one more that we get you singing even louder, which was last year, a quarter of sexual assault and rape convictions were by foreign nationals, so people that don't hold a British passport, and that's before we even get into the fact that a large percentage of those that are British nationals will, of course, arrived within the last 6 years as well. There's a huge overrepresentation, and it's just screaming at it. It's blaring headlights that this Labour government is just ignoring, and it's absolutely terrifying when you consider that we still have effectively open borders when it comes to legal migration as well, with countries that have very, very different attitudes and cultural conceptions of where women's role in society are when compared to us. And that's before we even get on to the huge issue of the small boats as well. It's absolutely astonishing, actually, that they not dare to mention this today.
And yet they think that actually talking about things like crimes by nationality or crimes culturally or something like that is racism, or it's going to provoke racism. But actually what generates the racism is not dealing with these things. It's trying to sweep it under the carpet. It's gaslighting people, saying there's nothing to see here. More than just gaslighting, actually attacking people, accusing them, throwing them into prison, for instance, if they're trying to suggest they may be a problem. Because my heart genuinely does go out to people on Happy Migrants Day who are the migrants that we want. Yeah, my heart goes out to my former next-door neighbours, brilliant Turkish couple who are more British than the average Brit, more British than the royal family. You say, oh my gosh, what's this country doing to itself? And yet, when we do end up with a series of sort of racist attacks and Muslim agendas, they could be exactly the sort of people who could be targeted wrongfully because of inaction by the government. And yet, the government knows how to pull its finger out on certain things, or perhaps not the government. This is actually the British Museum, because they're now going to be sharing artefacts from its collection with former colonies to help them decolonise. They've overseen the transfer of prized Greek and Egyptian treasures to a leading Indian museum. How does that make sense? You send Greek and Egyptian stuff to the
I think we're just so embarrassed at this point of having them.
Just chucking things all over the place.
Them, yeah.
The 80 artefacts are now displayed in a new gallery intended to undo colonial misrepresentation. I have got a huge... on this one, I must admit... I
thought you'd be more nuanced.
Elgin marbles, I'm a bit like, oh, send them back, would you?
Oh, really?
See, a little bit.
That's very clear for me that they've got to stay.
Because, yeah, well, you know, the thing is, I'm sort of like, oh, it'd be much better visiting Athens if they were there. But the thing is, you open the door to that, and then you're going to be sending back everything everywhere.
Exactly.
And the fact of the matter is, you see what goes on in places like Syria when the Islamists come in and start smashing up all their brilliant old antiquities. And talking about sending artefacts back to India, when I used to live in the south of India, there is a very famous Gandhi museum in the city where I lived, Madurai. And this is about 20 years ago. This is no word of a lie. I was working as a journalist. I was taken to the Gandhi museum and it was brilliant, and I was walked around and they had the lovely museum curator, he may not still be in position, just happily just opened some glass cabinet on the walls. Here you go, have this, oh, this. And I said, what's that? He said, oh, this is the blood-stained dhoti he was wearing when he was shot at. I'm like, I feel like I probably shouldn't have this in my bare hands.
And I kind of think
like, thank you, that's an honour, but do you want to take it back now? I feel like I should have the sort of Mickey Mouse white gloves or something.
Yeah, and I kind of think that is actually the point. You know, the British Museum has got a sort of a very, very long track record now of knowing how to curate different artefacts from around the world, put them in context next to one each other. Do they have that institutional knowledge in other museums and other institutions around the world? I doubt it's to anywhere near the same level as it is in the British Museum. And I kind of think actually this whole scheme is us just giving up, really. You know, that we used to be a civilization that would sort of aim for the stars when it comes to exploring knowledge, and there was no frontier that we didn't think was surmountable. But here we are now in this really, really rancid cultural relativism where you've got sort of chief staffs at the British Museum saying all cultures are great, you know, there's nothing that sort of distinguishes one culture from another. And you kind of think, you know, where are we going with this? What is the point of any of this conversation? It's objectively not true. And I think actually it's really, really sad that we're at this point now where we've just lost faith in ourselves to actually, you know, use these and curate these artefacts in a proper manner. And we're just desperate to almost effectively get rid of them.
Where does this end? You know, you go around art galleries and the vast majority of paintings, not just in the National Gallery, but the Louvre in France, are internationally collected. You know, they just give up Mona Lisa because that was painted by an Italian in Paris. They don't want to do that. And yet it seems to me, you know, if we have this whole repatriating things in our own country. I went to the Royal Academy's summer exhibition. Have you ever been?
No, I've not.
Oh, Batesy. It's a thing. It's a moment. I mean, talking about Philistines. Did you know, hold on, do you want a little factoid? Do you know why Palestine is called Palestine?
Dad is very insistent with that fact.
Right, because the Romans, in wanting to really upset the Judeo-Christians, decided to call it after the Philistines. That's why.
Yeah.
It wasn't a place, didn't exist. But no, I mean, I went to the Royal Academy Summer Exhibition, and there was basically paintings, you know, like, it looks like someone's done a finger finger painting or, you know, made stamps with potatoes. And it's sort of like, look at all the migrants on the boats, you know, these big paintings that look like they've been done by a blind person. And it's just like, oh, for God's sake, crying out loud, where's all the proper art? It's just so reductive.
Well, it absolutely is. And I also think part of this conversation of sort of, we're so desperate to get rid of artefacts from every other land because we want to sort of shore up their cultural heritage and their sense of identity. But at the same time, those people making those arguments are very happy to try and undermine British identity, British cultural heritage, say, you know, we're a mongrel species, which is an absolute balderdash, say we're a nation of immigrants, and just to sort of constantly deride and undermine actually the cultural accomplishments of this country. So it's one rule for them and another rule for us when it comes to this liberal worldview. And actually, I think, unfortunately, these people that hold this view are just so, they've proliferated every sort of branch of cultural, political, every branch of the establishment. Really, we're actually being undermined from within effectively by these people.
Oh, we're being penalised, we're being discriminated against actively from within. Now, do you know what I like to do when it's Happy Migrants Day? It's becoming an annual tradition starting from right now. On Happy Migrants Day, I like to try and find the most ridiculous migrant-related tweet. And I think on Happy Migrants Day 2025, I'm going to give the award for the best tweet to Carla Denyer.
Very well deserved.
Of the Green Party. Yes, yes, yes. Because she says, I'm deeply worried by what I've heard from organisations in Bristol about LGBTQ plus asylum seekers being the target of hate crime while in unsuitable asylum accommodation. And this week, I called on the government to act. So hold on, if these LGBTQ plus migrants are in unsuitable migrant accommodation, who are the ones who might be committing the hate crime against them?
Well, I think if you read the Foreign Office's travel advice on pretty much every country that asylum seekers come from, and where they're very, very clear that actually in almost every country there's very, very rancid attitudes towards LGBT people, then I actually think, you know, we know what the problem here is. And we also know that actually probably a lot of those asylum seekers that are claiming to be LGBTQ are probably not actually that, and they know that actually it just helps their asylum case as well. And I think this is just trying to really create another wedge issue where she can feel like she's standing up for some oppressed minority that probably doesn't actually exist in any great extent, and just weep and wail and try and make
I don't know. I'd imagine it probably does exist when it comes to this intersectionality, because if you are genuinely gay and coming from a country where they persecute gay people and then being put in the same accommodation as a load of people from the countries that persecute gay people, the likelihood is you might find yourself sharing a room with someone who doesn't agree with your sexuality. But when she says, I've called on the government to act, well, is she wanting to set up gay asylum hotels now? Like, what's this about?
Well, of course, they hate the hotels. They want effectively everyone that arrives in Britain on a small boat put in Buckingham Palace and every stately home around the country. I think that's probably where they want to see this end up. And, you know, I just don't see how the rhetoric of the Green Party reaches any sure ground or any ground that is effectively common sense, because they're so desperate to play this sympathy card for individuals that are broken into our country that they will find any issue that they can, make a huge issue out of it, and try and say, you know, this beastly British state is putting individuals in harm's way. You know, they're putting them in awful conditions, which we know
how dare they put them up in 4-star hotels
with discos, trips to Anfield, you know, shocking clocks, you know, 50 quid spending money. I mean, it's an absolutely ridiculous state of affairs that they're trying to make the British people feel like we're somehow not doing enough. You know, we spent 17 billion in the last few years on the asylum system.
Awful.
I think
so
we've paid more than enough, actually, and of course that's before we even get into those that get given refugee status, who then become a very, very long-term cost on the Treasury. 2 in 3 of them are claiming universal credit at this very point in time. You know, we've done way, way, way more than we should have actually done in any sort of reasonable sense.
You'd think, but Carla Denyer doesn't think so. Shall we have a little look?
Refugee organisations in Bristol have told me that they are seriously concerned about the state of accommodation and support for LGBTQ+ people seeking sanctuary in our city. Some individuals have faced hate crime while in asylum accommodation, attempting suicide as a result. So I ask the Minister, what is the government doing to ensure that LGBTQ+ asylum seekers get the specialist support they need? And will he consider providing separate safe accommodation for those LGBTQ+ asylum seekers who are particularly vulnerable?
What about our own gay men and women who might come face to face with someone who has imported homophobic attitudes. What about them? That doesn't matter, does it? Anyway, happy Migrants Day, one and all. We're going to take a short break now, but I'm going to keep Robert with me because I want him to face your thoughts and feelings when you call us up. 03444991000 is the number to dial. You can also send me a WhatsApp message on that number or leave me a voice note on happy Migrants Day. 8722 is the number to text, like the word talk, before you send your message, and we'll be speaking to some of you just after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back on this wonderful, jubilant and festive Migrants Day. Let's take your calls now and speak to Matthew, who's in Cheshire. Hi, Matthew.
Hello. Great show. Little girl's very happy. She's just got a letter off Father Christmas today, so that's a good day in the house. But on a sadder note, I couldn't believe how many migrants came over on boats this weekend, and I think everything you spoke about today on all the shows, it's all integrated. It's all connected. You've got hatred for Jews. You got monogamy. I can't say it now. Can't say it.
We like a bit of monogamy. Misogyny is what you're looking for.
Yeah, you got boys not liking women, being disrespectful to women. It's all related. It's all towards a certain faith and certain attitudes from certain parts of the world, and it's getting bigger and bigger and bigger as more and more keep coming over on the boats. It's frightening. I felt physically sick today when I heard how many came over the weekend, and it's scary. It's really scary. It's getting beyond the joke now. It's emergency status, I think.
Yes, it was beyond a joke a long time ago. But, I mean, it is that... do you see it all coalescing around the same thing, Robert? Because I certainly do. It's a twin thing, basically. One of it is this sort of erasure of our own culture that has been successful for 2,000 years, built upon Judeo-Christian values. You know, when you take God out of the equation, you better have something good to replace him with. And I don't mean Greta Thunberg and pronouns. But... I see it as both the erasure of our own culture. I said earlier to Kevin O'Sullivan, Jesus was basically the first feminist. I believe that as a Christian, right? You know, before him, ancient times, Old Testament, weren't so good for women, if I'm honest with you.
No.
Wouldn't really want to be a woman in Roman times, where the men control every single orifice in the household. The only thing I do like is the idea of a vomitorium, but that's a different conversation. But it wasn't so good for us in ancient times, and then Jesus comes along and essentially across the whole world revolutionised the whole concept of human human rights and rights for women. And we have attacked Christianity in this country, whether or not you're a believer. We've attacked the concept of a nuclear family, of fidelity, of monogamy, of parenthood. And we've replaced it not only with these sort of neo-religions, which are often connected to the progressive sort of values, in inverted commas, of hypersexualization, liberalism being essentially, to me, permissiveness on steroids. But we've also allowed very hostile cultures to come and fill up that vacuum as well.
Well, I think because almost Christianity created such a wonderful society over those 2,000 years and went through all those leaps, the Renaissance, the Enlightenment and so forth, we almost did let our guard down as to how lucky we actually are in sort of the grand canon of human history to actually have a society that is so well functioning, pretty much reached the frontiers that had never been reached before when it comes to women's rights and so forth. And the result is, when we've embarked on this mass migration experiment while simultaneously attacking the very foundations of our country, is we have allowed and emboldened cultures that frankly are hundreds of years behind where actually we were just a few short decades ago. And unfortunately, this is something that it's not just those that are coming across on the boats who are bringing these attitudes as well. It is very much as well the legal migration system, which has pivoted so far away from a European sort of relatively culturally compatible nations towards those from the rest of the world who have such distinct mentalities towards women and girls, towards their relationship with the state, towards their relationship with the community, and also as well their religious their beholdenness to their religion, which is, of course, for them, the overriding consideration on everything. But actually, we are creating a situation where attitudes that are completely abhorrent and would have been considered completely abhorrent are becoming increasingly normalised and prevalent in this society, and it's an incredibly worrying thing. But I do think, you know, when it comes to the small boats thing, this is something that is just exploding under Labour. They haven't got a single answer to it, and I think, you know, it's going to be the second worst year on record, and there is still not a plan in place to solve it. And unfortunately, actually, we will continue to see, very, very sadly, actually, we will continue to see these attacks that we keep seeing every single week now, almost every single day, against women and girls, every corner of the community.
And those are the ones we know about, those ones that make it into the press, those are the ones that are reported. It will be the tip of the iceberg. Matthew, thank you ever so much, and happy Migrants Day to you. Let's speak now to Laura, who is in the wonderful county of Wiltshire. Hi, Laura.
Hi, Alex. Just backing up in some ways what your previous caller said. I, as a Christian like you, but, you know, a bit late in life like I think you were, I have argued against so many liberal lefties over the years that I have no problem with multi-ethnicity, multi-race, but there are cultures that we just should not be tolerating. And one of the things that I've always brought up is female genital mutilation.
Yes.
And the men you talk to about it go, ew, I don't want to talk about that, when you describe to them what it is. Particularly those with girls. It's really funny. They get very squeamish. Anyway, this week, I'm not sure if you're aware, but the Journal of Medical Ethics, which included a whole raft of UK scientists, have come out saying that we shouldn't call it FGM anymore, because mutilation is really critical of various ethnicities, and we should call it female genital practices.
Yeah, I mean, we've got the story in front of us, and you raise a very valid point. This whole idea now that we can't chastise female genital mutilation, and it is mutilation, because it might offend certain cultures. Again, it's throwing women and girls under the bus at the altar of mass migration and multiculturalism. And when you look at how many reported incidents of FGM there are in this country, and how many prosecutions there have been, I believe it's thousands, it might even be over 10,000 now, and 2 prosecutions. Is that 2 only?
And Alex, each year, the numbers, talking to doctors I know, the numbers of incidences are going up in the percentage points that you wouldn't even want to contemplate.
Yeah.
And guess how many people get prosecuted for the 14 years you should get for it. But if our mainstream establishment, medics, are starting to say, oh, we mustn't, culturally ostracize these people, what the hell
They can happily be culturally ostracised in this country because they've got multiple Muslim countries they can go and live to who might enjoy a bit of FGM. But, you know, this is a subject quite close to my heart because when I was living over in Kenya, working for the president of Kenya, there was a huge focus then from the Kenyan government of trying to obliterate FGM in Kenya. You know, it's not welcome in most African communities. You find it out in, you know, some sort of more remote tribes, and they're doing everything they can to try and prevent it. And so for this country to turn around and go, oh, well, it's culturally offensive. We are not helping our cousins in the Commonwealth. And I just want to echo something else you said, Laura, when you said about, you know, multiracialism, multi-ethnicity. I'm more than happy with that. As someone who's lived in the Commonwealth, thank goodness for the Commonwealth, because they're the keystone of Christianity. You know, it's very often the Anglican Church is thriving in every other country but our own. So thank goodness for them. And if we are weak towards these subjects that they are having to work so hard to try and tackle in countries such as Kenya, if we, you know, have people coming over here and flying their daughters out to do these horrific, barbaric, vile practices on little girls, or perhaps they're doing it in dodgy back streets here, we are not helping them. We may as well just carry on writing those big foreign aid charity checks because they mean nothing. They mean nothing if we're not going to walk the walk as well as talk the talk.
100% with you. And if we don't back up our Judeo-Christian history here and stop this happening, we are finished.
Yep.
Yeah,
I agree.
I think that's I think you define a society by the practices that it tolerates, and actually where this effort from these academics is trying to take us is into a society where effectively anything goes. And I think it's absolutely abhorrent that we've got a journal that's purporting to be about ethics somehow in any way trying to validate what is effectively savagery. It's medieval practices that, you know, were, again, as I said, long ago eschewed from this society. You know, where does this end actually if we start tolerating these practices as well? I mean, I don't actually know how much worse it could get.
Let's set up Chop Square down in Tower Hamlets, shall we?
It's just regression across the board.
Oh, how about we bring back a bit of stoning? That's fine. You know, we can't criticise that.
These are medical academics, Alex, and they're being allowed to publish this stuff. And we have got to raise this as far as we can and as high as we can, and to stop this being accepted.
I agree with you. And there is no such thing in my mind. I was a student of philosophy back in the day, and when I had to do what was it, Morals and Virtues was the name of the course, one of the modules, and we discussed cultural relativism. Even back then I decided it was just nincompoopery, that it can't exist. You know, you take it ad nauseum and it just ends up eating itself up. You know, if there's such a thing as relativism, then it's relative to think that cultural relativism is relative. Anyway, you can sort of get yourself into a logical Gordian knot on that one. But Laura, thank you so much for your brilliant call. Robert, you've been brilliant. Thank you so much for
having me.
Being here and taking some calls.
On a very special day on the calendar as well.
Yeah, and shall we finish up before we go to advert break with a final rendition? No, because you've just seen us with a break, and I'm going to be going home. Happy Migrants Day, Migrants Day, Migrants Day, happy Migrants Day, Migrants, hooray! Yeah. All right, there you go. Happy Migrants Day. We'll see you after the break.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Fine.
Welcome back and welcome aboard HMS Common Sense. Mike Anstead, Sports Head of Content at The Sun. Now, Mike doesn't know what he's letting himself in for. You do if you listen regularly, which is how abysmal my knowledge of especially football is.
We can do a football quiz if you want.
Oh, God. Oh, actually, that's quite fun because then you'll see how abysmal it is.
Who's top of the Premier League?
I don't know.
Come on, guess.
Not Man United because they're not doing so well because something's going on.
It's definitely not Man United.
City.
No. London team.
Oh, there you go. Jodie was saying Arsenal in my ear. Yay, Arsenal!
There you go.
Yeah. There you go.
There we go.
Do I get that point?
You get half a point.
Now, what I'm quite proud about is there's a name I actually recognise in the very... Because I like the fact they always put questions of, like, little highlights because I'm an idiot. And there's a name I actually know, Thierry Henry.
Thierry Henry,
I know who that is.
So he is very much a bona fide Arsenal legend, an absolute legend, yeah. But he's getting his lifetime award at the BBC Sports Personality, so he'll be up on stage later in a lovely outfit, I'm sure. But today he's been talking about Arsenal and Arteta and injuries, and basically saying you've had a load of injuries this season, but you can't be using that as an excuse if you don't go and win it. So Arsenal haven't won the league for 22 years. Top of the table at the moment, as you well know.
I do now.
And he's saying you can't use an excuse. Everyone has the same problems. There's fixture congestion. Every big team loses players. Don't use this as an excuse. You've got to get over the line. This is the season. You've got to win it. So he's putting the pressure on Arteta there.
Oh, well, there we go. Who's their best person at Arsenal?
Who's the best person at Arsenal? Does that include anyone at Arsenal?
Who kicks well?
I would say Bukayo Saka is their star player, his superstar.
I think I've heard of him.
Yeah.
Does he plays for England?
Plays for England as well, yep, superstar player.
See, I feel like I could be in a pub quiz now.
Absolutely, yeah.
Man City may be getting a new manager. Who are the potential candidates to replace Pep?
Well,
Sounds
don't want to
like
get ahead of ourselves. Pep's not leaving just yet, but there's two things here. There's a growing feeling Pep might leave in the summer. So he's been at City for 10 years now. There's always question marks about how long he hang around. Is he going to get burnt out? The sort of feeling coming out of Spain where he comes from is, will this be the last season? So we don't know for sure. But what we do know is City will start getting a shortlist just in case the worst thing happens. And one of the people on that shortlist is Enzo Maresca. Enzo Maresca currently is having a bit of a standoff with the Chelsea board. He's upsetting a few people in there with his comments. He's obviously not happy about a few things where he's been treated.
What's he not happy about?
Well, it's just kind of has he been backed properly? Has he having conversations with him? So he's been quite spiky in a couple of press conferences and been very kind of vague in these sort of slight threats he's been putting out there. But that's all going on at Chelsea. In the meantime, City wanted him. He was actually part of Pep's coaching team at City as well. So he knows the club inside out. They know him. So it's quite an intriguing one now. Chelsea puts Chelsea under a bit of pressure because are they actually going to come out and fully back this guy, or is the cracks going to continue growing and in the background City maybe one day come in and try and pinch him?
Do you know, once upon a time I actually knew about football enough to know that there was that handsome Portuguese man who managed Chelsea.
Yeah.
What's his name again?
Andres Villas-Boas.
No, it wasn't that one.
No, Jose Mourinho. Yeah.
Mourinho.
Yeah,
he's
still very handsome. We love it. We love him in Sunderland because he's great fun. I want him back in the Premier League sometime soon.
Yeah, I miss that guy. He almost became an honorary Brit at one point.
Yeah,
didn't he,
still
really?
still got
like a national treasure.
He's still got a big house in somewhere in Chelsea, Kensington.
Oh, does he?
So, yeah.
Oh, there you go then.
Yeah.
Well, he's probably left by now. He's probably had his Rolex nicked and his been threatened being stabbed by a kid on a line bike. Let us talk now about darts. I do like the darts, and I kind of get myself into darts this time of year because who wouldn't? It's a great drinker's sport.
Absolutely, it's great. I sadly had to turn down the chance to go on Friday because my Christmas schedule's got a bit too busy. But less about me,
more. The tickets to me.
I should have done. I thought you had a VIP pass somewhere.
You didn't know me on Friday, but you do now.
Exactly. So the main thing about darts is David Munir, who is a name not too many people would know before today. A Kenyan superstar is now coming. He was a 16-1 outsider to beat Mike Dedeker into this afternoon session. Comeback victory, sparked great scenes at Ali Pali, an absolute star, real character up there on the stage. So it's a great story. I mean, I'll really test your knowledge now. How many Kenyan darts players can you name?
None.
I couldn't name any before this afternoon. Now I do know David Munir. So good on him. It was absolutely brilliant scenes. It's normally the evening stuff we get carried away in, but I'd be amazed if we'll beat that for a story over the next few days at Ali Pali.
I love that. So is he playing tonight?
No, he played this afternoon.
Oh, he played this afternoon.
First round match this afternoon.
But he got through.
He's through, yeah, but he was the 16-1 outsider. That's probably the equivalent of Barnet beating Arsenal in the FA Cup. So it was a real big win. So he'll be back in the second round in a few days' time.
I'm gonna have to look this up now as a sort of Kenya file.
Definitely go and look at it. And there was a Japanese player who won earlier. So there's a real kind of, we get so used to so many UK British players who normally take the limelight, but actually it sort of, he shows you there's a real mix of nationalities out there because the draw has expanded to 128 players now.
Is this sort of largely, do you think, as well, because darts is kind of professionalising it, whereas once upon a time it very much was the sport of the pubs, and even when you went to watch professional darts, they were there with their pint on the side, having their cigarette.
Well, they still are there with the pint on the side.
And a bit of that, and then throwing some darts, all their sovereign rings glistening under the spotlights.
I think if you think of all the sports you can take up and how much time and money it costs you, anyone could go and buy a dartboard. Any kid can buy a dartboard and practice for 5 hours a day, and they'll probably become pretty good. And then some of them can potentially become really good. And then if you suddenly dangle £1 million to win at the World Championships,
well, if Luke Littler wants to know how much of a household name he is now, I was up the middle of Lidl the other day, and there's a Luke Littler dartboard for sale, alongside a sort of 3D rendering jigsaw of Max Verstappen's previous championship-winning F1 car.
Exactly.
So, like, there you go.
And that would be in the bargain bin now. Max Verstappen now. Lando
I know,
Norris
yes, my friends and I did joke about that.
Luke Littler's an absolute superstar. And look, his earning power. He's 20.
Gosh.
He's already a multi-millionaire. I mean, he could be playing till certainly his 40s, maybe beyond that. Think how much he could earn. If he's earning a couple of million every year through not just the World Championships, all the events through the year, including the Premier League, you can rack up a lot of money. So look, if you're a kid sitting at home, 10-year-old kid with a dartboard,
go for it.
Yeah.
Can never practice too much.
Still not too late for you, Alex. You could take it up, couldn't you? You could fit a dartboard in here somewhere, can't you?
Hand-eye coordination is not my forte.
Right.
And maths is worse. So this is the thing. You've actually got to be able to add up doing darts, don't you?
Yeah.
And I can't. But what I can do is just about add up when it comes to time, and we're due to take a top-of-the-hour advert break. So I want to say thank you ever so much to Mike Anstey. Before I let you go, Truth Gun, what's your favourite sport?
Football.
Oh, there you go. I kind of guessed that. I think most sort of sporting journalists would say football. Mine's Formula One. So next time you come in, make sure it's in February when the season.
Did you buy the Verstappen Lego car?
I did not, no. Oh, well. Thank you very much, Mike, and you don't go anywhere. We're going to say goodbye to Mike, but not to you, because there's still one more hour to go. So go pour a big gin and tonic, and I'll see you just after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there and welcome back to the show. Now, nobody likes to be alone over the festive period, and especially not on Migrants' Day, when we sit there and we light our migrant cakes and we open our migrant gifts and we, wait to see which migrant cards have come through the letterbox, and we suddenly realise that we're all alone on this most important of days. So I'm so touched that one of my best friends, Mr. Benedict Spence, is here to celebrate Migrants' Day with me. Hi, Benedict.
Hello. Assalamu alaikum.
Hey! It is Migrants' Day, of course. You knew
that's just how I greet everybody these days. It rolls easily off the tongue.
It does, yeah. Very lyrical.
Yeah.
Very lyrical indeed. Anyway, let's begin on Happy Migrants' Day of talking about the fact that finally it's only taken, people being slain in cold blood on Bondi Beach for the police to suddenly go, ooh, shouting globalise the Intifada might be rather provocative.
Somewhat. Ever so slightly. It has taken us, 2 and a bit years to get to this point. I'm in such a pickle about this, because on the one hand, yes, it's the right thing that we have to do. Ultimately, you can't allow people indefinitely to carry on screaming these things, whether they know what it means or not, actually. We all see what the end results of these things are. But I still do feel really rather irritated and grieved that this hatred, this sectarianism that just didn't exist in this country to the degree that it has until recently, has been allowed to come into this country, it has been imported into this country, and has been allowed to fester and proliferate. Because ultimately now what we're talking about is infringements on free speech. Now, let's be clear, we don't have total free speech in this country. We never have. That's a myth. But we would like to move to a position where we have more free speech than less free speech. And every time something like this happens, even if it is necessary, and I do think in this case it is necessary, I just sigh and I think, well, why is it that actually we have had to get to a point where rather than stamp out the prejudice itself and say to people bringing it into this country, actually, no, you're not allowed to have this sort of thing. This is not what we tolerate. Instead, after the fact, we then have to turn around and go, oh, well, this might be a little bit nasty, so we're going to have to ban the mention of it. I would simply rather have none of it in the country in the first place.
Yet again, though, in my opinion, it's weak, it's lily-livered, because it is hiding behind, essentially, a technicality.
Yeah.
It's hiding behind, these form of words. The words are behind the actions.
Yeah.
And it isn't. We all know that actually these pro-Palestine protests have been hugely funded, curated, infiltrated, managed, exploded, for want of a better phrase, perpetuated by pretty unpleasant organisations that if you were to look at the shell companies who are behind funding and organising some of these, you would no doubt find connections to terrorist organisations and hostile states, and certainly when it comes to the amplification online. And we know this because we actually had the counter-extremism czar tell the last government that this was the case, and other countries have banned these marches, because it's, in my mind, it is the marches themselves that are enabling and emboldening terrorists who suddenly go, great, we're not only are we being able to get away with more, so let's do more, but it's whipping up a frenzy. This is what they're designed to do. They are recruitment and grooming exercises. Yes, there's a lot of useful idiots going along with them in their fashionable keffiyeh scarves so they can get their, picture out on Snapchat or whatever.
Yeah.
But the actual architects of this stuff and the movements behind this stuff are using it to radicalise and recruit. Of that I have no doubt. And so even now to turn around and go, oh, well, if people are saying globalise the Intifada, we better just nick them, it's still not the right approach.
No, it doesn't go far enough because, so to speak, the genie is already out of the bottle. Actually, the radicalisation has already got underway. And banning this sort of thing and arresting the idiots that stand there with the placards and chant it is not actually going to get to the heart of those who will actually visit violence on the people who these chants are about, and that's ordinary Jewish people. And I go back to what I was saying, I'd rather simply not live in a society with those people. I'd rather that they weren't here in the first place. I'd rather that we took extreme measures to get rid of the people who our authorities know full well what they're planning and what it is that they're proposing. And I'm sorry, also, I do think it is acceptable to say, when it comes to, if we are going to go down the route right, of saying that we are going to have different cultures in our society. They're going to be invited in. I have absolutely no qualms prioritising and protecting those who play by the rules over those that don't. There are some communities that come to this country and they integrate, they want to be British, they don't want to sort of let go of all aspects of their heritage, fine, but ultimately the values of the country and the opportunities that come with the values, not simply the financial, but the cultural opportunities that come with that, that is what you want. That is what you want in terms of communities coming in, individuals coming in. That is a sensible migration system, and it is by its very nature discriminatory, because we should discriminate against the people.
Discrimination is good, ladies and gentlemen, because it means telling the difference between good people and bad people.
Yes, those who also come here and they don't look at our civilization and think, I want to be part of this. They think it owes me something. They think this is an easy opportunity, and once they're here they think, I'm going to make this a little bit more like it was the place where I left. And they don't stop to think, well, why is the place that I left not quite as good as the one that I've come to?
It's funny, because when you are worldly wise, as I like to think we both are, when I looked at all the countries now in the sort of American travel ban and Trump saying we're not going to do business or get people in from your nations, you can predict the countries that are going to be on the list. Apart from Antigua, Barbuda, I don't get that one. I'm like, why are they
Maybe
on
Trump was just kicked out of there one time.
Yeah,
maybe
I don't know. Maybe he wanted to build a Mar-a-Lago there, and they were like, no,
some particular
no Trump
niche,
hotel,
a niche grudge
no golf
there.
course.
I'd respect that, though.
But
like a really petty reason for
oh my
all
God,
of
have
these,
you seen his presidential walk of fame?
Oh, it's magnificent.
It's brilliant. Anyway, but when you look at those countries, I was sort of looking through, because I've lived so much around Africa that I was looking for places that I've lived and worked, and they're not on there. Because, you know, the places I've lived and worked have been stable African nations with functioning democracies, like Ghana, like Kenya. And of course they're not on there, because they're stable in countries with working democracies. Talking about America as we were, there's breaking news that Britain's got a new ambassador to the US at long last. It's going to be veteran diplomat Christian Turner. Do you know him?
No, not personally.
No, I don't either. There's a little picture of him up there. It looks nice. I like that. A veteran diplomat, good, gets the job done, knows the sort of machinery, not a political appointment like Mandelson.
Yeah.
What a ridiculous appointment that was. I mean, that was clearly some sort of, you know...
It was, I mean, it was such a roll of the dice with Mandelson, because you knew on the one hand he was absolutely going to be able to butter up Trump's ego, no question about that.
Oh, yeah,
but on the
yeah,
other
yeah,
hand, you also knew that he had a finite time limit in which to do it before something went wrong. Because we all knew something. We all saw that coming down the tracks. So it was a question of, right, let's say you got 3 to 4 months. How much can you get done before it blows up in your face? That was that exercise in diplomacy. Not the best.
Not the best. But there you go. Christian Turner is now the new ambassador to the US. So we can all go Googling and find out what he's all about. And if he's a proper diplomat, we hopefully won't be able to find out anything, because that is how they're supposed to function. Now, let's talk about today, as well as being happy Migrant Day, Migrant Day, Migrant Day. It's also the seminal moment that the Labour Party have turned around and said that violence against women and girls ends here. It is a national emergency, thus they said. And Sir Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, has put out on his X account all the brilliant things they're going to do to prevent violence against women and girls, which ironically, Benedict, doesn't include acknowledging that we're importing misogynistic attitudes from countries with very different rules and views of women than we have. It doesn't involve actually running a proper national inquiry into the rape gangs. No, it doesn't actually involve doing a huge investigation into the correlation between sexual crimes against women and open-door migration. It doesn't even involve the idea that perhaps men shouldn't be in domestic abuse shelters when they decide they've become a woman all of a sudden. No, none of those things, because that would go against the doctrine of wokery. No. Women and girls must continue to be thrown under the bus, she says, chucking her biro across the studio, when it comes to protecting one's progressive credentials.
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be about teaching boys in school to respect women, isn't it? They're going to be taught what misogyny... And the thing is, with that, it sounds really nice, sounds really, you know, fluffy and progressive, but the problem is that's been happening for as long as I've been sentient, is that boys have been taught in schools, you must be nice to girls. And the problem with that is, of course, if you are the standard young man who is actually sort of brought up in a fairly normal background, that's not actually going to cross your mind. It's not the sort of thing that you go around your business thinking, you know what I really want is to be mean to women, because that's not actually how it is. People who are abusive and cruel towards women will be abusive and cruel towards women regardless of what they are taught in the special class in school teaching you to be nice to those people.
Yeah.
And herein lies a very large part of the problem. I mean, as you point out, a lot of this is cultural, a lot of this is in the home. Sitting the boys down for half an hour once a week and saying, oh, don't do this, don't do that, especially if they're being lectured by a female teacher, is not really going to cut through at all. It doesn't break the links between community attitudes, like you said, in certain communities where women, if we're being honest, are just not seen as the same. They're not valued the same way that men are. Their roles in those communities are not the same. They have to cover up. They have to do what the men tell them to do. They are effectively property. It's not going to break any of those boundaries, and I can tell you right now they won't do that because that will be racist to do so. But on top of that, it's also not addressing something else, which is the very real link, I think, between quite violent and extreme pornography.
Yes.
And herein is the problem. The only way you can deal with that is not the Online Safety Act, where a little thing comes up and says, put your name and your details into all of this.
Useless.
The only way you can do that when it comes to young boys of this sort of age is to take away their access to the internet. And this might sound, I know people are going to go, how on earth are you going to do that? Children of a certain age should not have access to smartphones. I still cannot believe that they have smartphones, even normal phones, in a school setting. What benefit does it have, really, beyond beyond communicating with their parents? Which, let's be clear, a generation and a generation and a generation
You
didn't
wouldn't
need
let
to
an
communicate
8-year-old
with.
child go wandering around the sex shops of Soho. You'd be like, probably not age appropriate,
So
and yet
why?
that is what living online is
and
all
this
about.
is the thing, you can teach young boys all about these sorts of things. You can teach them what they are and what the dangers are. If you give them the gateway to these things, they'll find it.
I've always said, and you've known me a long time, Benedict, and I've banged on about this for ages, that a government has got to get to grips with the very notion of user-generated content on porn websites. If you can't have, I can't sit there and grab a load of apples and make my own scrumpy and sell it out the front door of my house, although try and stop me. Not that I know how to do it. But, you can't, people don't sell bootleg alcohol. Well, they do, but it's prohibited.
These are really bad examples. Lots of people do exactly this sort of
what
thing.
I'm saying is, you cannot, pornography, look, I'm an old prude. I hate pornography, personally. I wouldn't watch it. I wouldn't want a partner of mine to watch it because I consider it an act of infidelity in a relationship, okay? But that's my personal view. But, adults can be adults. They can watch what they like. If they want to go down the video shop and buy a DVD and go through the shame process of walking through the little net curtains and, standing at some sort of neon-lit desk surrounded by vibrators and other weird devices that you don't want to question what they may do, and sort of slipping your sort of DVD across the counter, and they look at the title and go, all right, into that, are you? Great. There should be some shame associated with it. But it should be a regulated industry. What I find unbearable is the provenance when it comes to these user-generated websites where anyone can watch a video and anyone can post a video. So much. And if people out there understood how much of this stuff was industrialized sexual abuse. How many of the women in those videos might have been women escaping Ukraine, little girls, or people who have been trafficked, or people who owe debts to loan sharks, or people with mental health issues.
This also has to be said, because we only ever talk about this through the prism of boys doing this. A significant amount of the consumer base of violent pornography
is men.
No, it's female now. Increasingly, it is female as well. So when we talk about needing to tell people, needing to teach people how to be respectful, it's twofold. You also need to be taking the phones away from the girls as well, because they're watching the same thing and they're thinking this is what's normal.
It's this strange normalisation where everyone suddenly got into, have you seen 60 Shades of Grey, whatever it's called? 50 Shades, how many shades of grey it was?
How many are there now? I don't know.
It's far too many. There you go. Jodie knows.
There's a new shade every year.
There's a new shade. There's one shade too many.
In the Pantone catalogue.
But, it all became normalised. This sort of like, isn't it great? It's like, no, it's not. This is not okay. This shouldn't be normalised. And the hypersexualisation of little kids, it all stems from the pornification of society, which I largely blame the whole Kardashians and their enterprise about. People who don't act or sing or play sport. No, they're just famous for having surgeries for the male gaze. Sorry if I do sound like modern-day Mary Whitehouse. But you mix these things together. You mix the mass importation of misogynistic attitudes from very different cultures into a country which is porn-obsessed, and smartphones, where people coming from, you know, Syria have seen Bonnie Blue on their smartphone. They arrive in England. The person who's probably recruited them to get on that particular dinghy is probably showing them, look down Bournemouth Beach. You might get to stay in a hotel here. The girls are all in bikinis. And what are you going to get in that toxic cocktail? You're going to end up with women in a really difficult position. And, you know, I've been banging on about this for years, but I kind of do sort of slightly credit myself for being slightly ahead of the wave, because I remember when Kev and I used to do Crosstalk, and I talked about this, and it went viral everywhere. Everywhere. I had people messaging me in places like India going, oh my God, I've just seen you, you know, because I used to live in there, just seen you on social media. Literally, last week, I had a Polish friend of mine go, you're going viral in Poland. I'm like, that old thing's doing the rounds again. Anyway, let's remind ourselves of what I said, that I think has stood the test of time.
What do you think, Alex? What do you? Because you talked about this morning.
This is such an important issue for me, because I've been living in London for 10 years. I've also lived in multiple other countries around the world. Never before have I felt as unsafe as I do now. When I walk down the street, I'm increasingly being leered at. I'm increasingly being followed, like I'm going around the souks of Morocco. And it's not, visibly to me anyway, people who were born and bred here. It isn't. And you know, it's very difficult because we're not allowed to talk about it because, oh my gosh, you know, that breaks taboo. Oh, you know, you're a racist if you say this. I'm sorry. A lot of women going about their daily business feel that their safety is being directly threatened by people who are coming from different cultures. And this needs to be discussed, because I've had enough. All my other female friends have had enough. When I put this stuff online, the number of comments online from other women saying they've had enough and saying thank you for talking about this. Was it not enough when we noticed what was going on with grooming gangs? Was it not enough when we see what's happened to the victim of Abdullah Zaidi? When are we going to have the conversation that women's safety is being mortgaged at the altar of mass immigration and this faux political correctness?
And I speak to many other women who suffer the same indignities and offences like you do, who don't have a public profile, who are not in the media. And they are echoing what you are saying about the utterly unacceptable behaviour that they are being subjected to, and I keep urging them to report it.
I love it. So I asked the question, when are we going to have the conversation? Oh, we're definitely having it in 2025, aren't we?
We are. And I mean, the thing is, one of the very irritating things about all of this is when you try to have this conversation, people push back and they say, well, we've always had sex crimes and, you know, people harassing women and mistreating women, as if that makes it okay to actually invite more people into the, you know, as if because white men have done it in the past and still do it now, that means that it's okay, it's open season for anybody to do it. And I think it's really interesting because that almost is a continuation of part of the problem of so many issues in this country, one of the root causes, which is that the elites of this country do not treat Britain as a homogenous nation state, or not even a nation state of component parts. They treat it as a marketplace, where ultimately it's a free-for-all for anybody who wants to come and have a go. If you want to come and work in the UK, your passport shouldn't matter. If you want to come and live in the UK, you want to take benefits, you want to do any of these things, it shouldn't actually matter who you are or where you come from. You should just be able to rock up. And it's a perversion of the idea of the United States, that idea of a nation built on a melting pot, which of course is in itself actually a modern invention of something, you know, further down the line. It's a perversion, it's a warping of that idea that you are able to just throw people into a market and somehow it'll all work itself out. And it never does work itself out there, because at the very least, the United States has a process by which it tries to turn people into Americans. The whole process of saluting the flag and, you know, singing the national anthem every day in schools, that sort of thing. We don't even have that in this country because it is seen as gauche, it is seen as working class, it is seen as tacky, it is seen as xenophobic. You can't even have the process of trying to turn people into Brits. Whereas once upon a time, where the initial successes of migration happened was because there were people who wanted to be British in small, controlled amounts coming into this country, usually from British colonies or former British colonies. That is a world away to what we have now.
It's funny, you know, very often the people who seem to be talking to me who are the most upset about open-door immigration are all of my friends who are themselves immigrants.
Or the children of immigrants.
They say, we came to this country wanting Britain, where is it?
Because their parents, their grandparents, went through the process. They worked hard, they jumped through all the hoops, and all of that effort now, they sit and they look at what is in fact now the system and they go, Well, what was the point of all of that effort? What was the point of all the hardship? What was the point of working? What was the point of perfecting the accent, dressing correctly, adhering to all the sort of social norms? If now people from the same country that they came from however many generations ago can rock up and are not encouraged to integrate.
I know.
In fact, they're rewarded for not integrating.
I remember the pylon. I mean, that feels like 1,000 years ago, because honestly, when I did that comment, no one was talking about this. They really were not, which is why it went viral. But the pylon that I had to suffer, because I said, you know, getting harassed by people who, to me, visibly are not born and raised in... Visibly? What do you mean by visibly? All the people waiting to try and sort of pull the rug from under your feet. You're a racist then because you're saying that someone... It's like, no, I was followed home by a man with a girl.
I mean, a big giveaway is the hissing. Since when did we hiss in Britain?
Right.
Since when did people hiss? That's not actually a mannerism that you're used to. And that is something that has come because it is pretty common across the Maghreb and parts of the Middle East. There's nothing racist about pointing out that that's how people do it.
There's a load of people who then attacked me for saying it's like walking around the Moroccan souks. I'm like, yeah, no, I stand by it. I still go to Morocco on holiday every year.
Having walked around Moroccan souks.
Having walked around Morocco souks on plenty of occasions. And it's ironic, actually, now when I have to walk around the Moroccan souks and I don't have someone with me, I always want to walk around with my mate Omar, who's a Moroccan man, and we actually have to go to a police station and get a special little certificate, such as the harassment of women by local men, that if they see, visibly, a Moroccan man with a female they assume to be a tourist, the police are minded to come up and apprehend the man for harassment. So we actually, if I want to hang out with my mate Omar, I have to go to the police station, get a certificate saying he's allowed to be with me.
And that's how they treat their own people. That's how little they trust their own people.
Benedict, thank you ever so much for joining me on a happy Might's Day. It's been a pleasure to have your company. Right, we're going to be taking a short break now, but when we come back, we're going to be sticking with the subject of misogyny. And Kemi Badenoch's response to it, saying sexism classes are a distraction, and she has come out and said, yeah, thank me for laying down the carpet for you to be able to do this, Kemi. Yeah, I'll get the letter in the post. She's pointed out that British boys are not the problem. Daring talk from the leader of the Conservatives. That's coming up after this.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, you know, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back and welcome into the studio. Once again, I'm doing very well with queuing up real-life human beings in the flesh, nice and fresh. Venice Allen, women's rights campaigner. And, well, you know, for us women's rights campaigners, today should be a glorious day because apparently the government have declared a national emergency when it comes to the safety of women and girls. Brilliant, I thought to myself when I heard that they've now realised this is a national emergency. Maybe they're going to turn around the boats. Maybe they might stop these men from fundamentally different cultures from, you know, wandering around outside the compounds of their hotels and chatting up schoolgirls. Yet maybe they might actually finally stop sitting on the judgment for the Supreme Court and come up with the actual guidance saying men shouldn't go into women's changing rooms. Oh, maybe they might crack down on user-generated porn websites and realise that teaching kids about pornography doesn't exempt them from the fact that it's a criminal act that children are able to access pornography. And actually most of the videos put on porn websites are crimes within themselves. You know, they could do something to actually address what is an emergency, and instead they're living off the back of that blimmin' psyop, that adolescence thing that was on Netflix that everyone treated as some kind of documentary. And you know what? I agree with Kemi Badenoch, and she's turned around and said sexism classes are a distraction because British boys aren't the problem. I'm not saying they aren't being influenced by some of the horrible stuff they're seeing online, but oh, we got some bigger fish to fry, don't we, Venice?
I mean, yeah, I do agree that we have got a specific problem with bringing lots of men in from really sexist cultures. But I also think that there is a point that we do need to solve the crimes that you're talking about, the crimes in pornography, the crimes in the girls' toilets. What young girls have to put up with nowadays is serious. Yeah. But I don't have any faith in the way that they're tackling it with classes.
No. Well, the thing is, I think we're both sort of on the same thing here, which is we do live in such a hypersexualised age now. To me, one of the saddest things that has come to pass in the 21st century, you know, when I was a girl, genuinely, I wanted to be a fighter pilot. And I had on my notice board, I had a little clipping that my mum had got of the first female fighter pilot in the UK. Turns out I'm blimmin' myopic. I can't see the wood from the trees.
You are a fighter pilot, Alex. On the telly. Yeah.
But I'd love to have been in charge of a tornado. Better yet, the SR-71, the Blackbird. Boom! But no. But that, you know, and I grew up with Margaret Thatcher as a Prime Minister, the Queen, our three most successful monarchs, our longest reigning, and probably some of our greatest monarchs have been Elizabeth I and II and Victoria. So I kind of grew up in a world as well where, you know, the 90s were all about the ladettes. Oh, we can drink a pint as well. We're as good as the guys. We can have some fun. And the fashion was sort of cargo pants. Yeah. Oh, it was all too easy. What's so sad now is little girls are being told, you've got to be a Kardashian. Yeah. You've got to literally have implants and your body completely remodeled so you look like basically a composite of, you know, things that men might want in the bedroom and some useful orifices, and that's it.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
It's so sad. No wonder so many girls, at the same time, they're being told, oh, do you not want to be a girl? Oh, you can choose to be a boy. Hence the dysphoria, or what people think, the brainwashing to people thinking they've got dysphoria. None of these topics are going to be tackled. None.
And they're talking about consent. I mean, it's very interesting that they're talking about consent and yet they're doing this trial with puberty blockers of children who cannot consent. They're taking 226 kids and saying, oh, do you want to have no sexual feeling? Do you want to, you know, damage your bones, your brain, your fertility? And yet they want to tell my sons about consent in the classroom. I've got teenage sons, both of them have done consent classes, one at university, one at school. And it's just, it's all rubbish. That's not how you tackle it. We need to enforce the crime. When men commit and boys commit crimes, we don't need to create new laws. The laws are there. But where are the convictions?
But I think we've got to stop this man bashing, which emanates largely from Jess Phillips. It's men. It's men. Do you know what?
But she won't say which men.
Can we stop attacking all men? Because I know some thoroughly decent men. And the more we attack men, we need good men to be lifted up, elevated, praised, idolised, celebrated. The idea of a man being a father and a husband, not the perennial bachelor who's swiping right on Tinder and wears one of those weird deep knee t-shirts.
On his phone,
that's not the way. We don't want that. But we don't celebrate that. Instead, we sort of, when I say we, they, these liberal elites, bash the patriarchy. I'm like, no, actually, what makes good boys is good men. Good sons come from good fathers.
Good fathers. That's what you hit the nail on the head there, and that's the problem, that not all the boys have got good fathers or even good mothers. And I don't think that it should be the school and the state teaching us about sex and consent and all these things. It should come from the home. But then how do we do that when parents are being neglecting their children, abusing their children even, and not even in contact with their children? It's the fatherless thing which gets spoken about a lot, but it is true. That's how boys learn to be good men. It's from their dads and their mums.
No, true. Although I did, God praise my amazing stepfather, but my brother and I grew up not knowing our father, and he's a brilliant stepdad, amazing mum, and my brother is is sort of a church worship leader and 3 kids and just one of the nicest human beings on this here planet. But they're getting again. I look at this and I look at the plans that they've outlined that they're going to do in order to make everything safe for women, and it's farting around at the edges. I was trying to find an Ofcom friendly term there. I was going tick the list of words in my mind. I was like, can't say that.
Well, they're just they just talk about violence. I don't think these women or men, but it's particularly women, politicians and influencers, journalists. I think they should take male violence against women and girls out of their mouth until they can define what a woman is.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you something as well, which is sort of like, when I first started banging on about the relationship between mass immigration and women's safety a few years ago now, you can't say that. And I was banned from talking about it. I was banned from talking about women's issue by my previous employer. Those who know my career know who that is. But genuinely, I was told, stop talking about the women's stuff. Now, all of a sudden, I see a load of men on various platforms banging the drum that this is a big concern for them. And I'm like, I know the way you treat your girlfriend. I know the way you treat your wife. You don't give up about women, actually. So don't you start wearing this as a badge of honour to make yourself look good, campaigning as if you care about women's safety.
100%, Alex.
I'm not saying that we don't want men part of the discussion, but there's a lot of men who are sort of doing it as a...
But it takes away the legitimacy of the argument that we actually are genuinely worried about this issue, and it's not racism to talk about it. It's not like Islamophobia. It's a genuine thing. But then when other people come onto it and they don't care about women and they are using it like that, it discredits women like you who've got a serious point to make.
Yeah, no, and it is now sort of one of those popular points, and there's a lot of, there's some men out there who are very well intentioned on this, but I'm thinking of a few who I'm like, just get out of this debate, because you are no friend of ours, really. But Kemi Badenoch's running away with this, isn't she, frankly? This is her sort of safe place when she's talking about the cultural issues, but this is where I think that, to make it political, that she's going to have a bit of an upper hand when it comes to reform, because she's a woman, she's got a strong female voice, and she's been speaking about this stuff herself for quite a while.
Well, I think there's some really great women in Reform UK as well. Yeah. Yesterday we had our protest against puberty blockers. We had Layla Cunningham.
Yeah, she's fantastic.
We had Sarah Pochin, and both of them were absolutely magnificent. So I think you need to build that women in reform, Alex. And I think that the women campaigners that I know are quite open to it. Not all of them.
Yeah.
But some of them are.
Yeah, and I certainly think if we leave the job in the hands of the government and the Labour Party and Jess Phillips to be the ones to make inroads in protecting women's safety, I'm afraid I just don't think it's going to
Unfortunately,
happen.
in the Labour Party, some of the most sensible voices are coming from men, like Blue Labour, John Hinder, Morris Glassman, they all understand this issue and they would agree very much with your point of view, my point of view. But the problem with Labour, I used to be in Labour, and they got rid of all the brilliant women.
Really?
Well, you're not allowed to say anything. You know, you got banned just for saying a woman is an adult human female. So who's left?
Like Rosie Duffield.
Yeah, and loads of other women that you might not know who weren't actually MPs, but were like driven out of local politics, like I was.
Yeah, I mean, this is it. People like the Green Party and the Labour Party sort of, you know, run around going, well,
the Green Party's another level of bad.
The Green Party are terrible when
and
it
the
comes to women's protection. No, I know. Oh, Venice, it's been lovely having you here, and keep up the good work, and no doubt we'll meet again to have a proper old something fest.
Put the world to rights.
Put the world to rights, indeed. Right, OK, we're going to take a short break now. Don't go anywhere, because after the break, you're going to be treated to tomorrow's headlines today, as I'm joined by the brilliant Will Barker, Deputy Head of News for The Sun.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back, and welcome to Studio. Will Barker, Deputy Head of News for The Sun, for tomorrow's headlines today. And here we go, headline number one. Oh yeah, this dropped us some breaking earlier. Lolita pics of creepy Epstein. OK, what have they put into circulation?
Well, yeah, in the last hour, the House Oversight Committee in America have dropped a new batch of these Epstein pictures. There's 68 of them. Apparently they've got 95,000 of these images, and they apparently range from very dark to just rather mundane. And so what they're trying to do is put a sample of this stuff out every time. And yeah, there very much is that in this. There's sort of pictures of his passport, pictures of maps of his estate, but it then gets really creepy. There's these pictures of sort of parts of women, we think, with words from Lolita, the book about the horrible groomer, written on them, which is all very creepy. And there's pictures of Bill Gates and Noam Chomsky, all of which aren't accused in any way, but they crop up in these pictures. Right. Sort of shows you these kind of how he had this sort of huge network of sort of power individuals that he used to deal with.
Without being crass, I kind of think you weren't anybody if you weren't invited to Epstein's Island.
Yeah.
But what are the Democrats playing at with all of this? So one thing I don't understand about this story is why they have hold of this and they're just
Well, I think because it's part of the House of Representatives, they get to sample the Epstein files and they've got access to it, and so they're just trying to put them out. I mean, it's sort of seen as a little dig at Trump every time. certainly from these 68, that doesn't see anything that troubles Trump.
Oh, if they had the smoking gun on Trump, that thing would have been out before he was elected as president. There's nothing. There's nothing to see here. Clearly, I think we've seen all. There's going to be famous last words.
I mean, this is all on the dawn of the deadline for the full motherload of all the files that should be coming out tomorrow. So watch this space.
Ooh, are we going to be hanging out again tomorrow as well? Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. I look forward to it. Now, I like this as a headline. Coldplay ruined my life.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you remember back in, was it the summer? When the Coldplay gig got caught, this pair of executives seemingly up to no good. That's what you thought from the video. They were sort of appeared to be canoodling and then quickly separated when the video hit them. Now, it turns out we were all wrong. The HR boss from Christine Cabot spoken to the Times. She says, no, we never had a thing together. We were just the first time that we physically touched. I'm not sure if she's telling the truth.
I know. She would say that, wouldn't she?
She would say that,
She would say that. Do you know what I quite liked about the whole sort of kiss cam thing? It went international everywhere. And I sort of saw it as this little victory for the renaissance of monogamy. You know, we kind of live in a society where it's always like, oh, I'm poly this and I'm thrupled and, you know. And it was a bit like, don't cheat! So I was like, yeah, I like that, because I'm very old-fashioned, me. I liked to see the sort of shame and indignation at this pair of married people cavorting and being caught in the act.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to like this story a lot, because I can see the word swearing in it. Rude health.
Yeah. So there's a study done out in America that apparently if you swear a lot, you're going to get fitter.
Blame it on Ofcom, you're making me unhealthy. Can I just say?
Yeah, exactly.
Because when I'm not shackled by their regulations, I've got the mouth of a sailor on leave.
Yeah.
So people using foul language were able to do more press-ups. Have you tried it out? Have you tried doing a sort of...
I have to say, I'm not a massive press... I'm a bit of a runner. I could do it when I'm running, maybe.
Yeah, I actually want you to do... You know, I want you to do... We've got to be on separate days, but, you know, we've got to have an equivocation over the circumstances. But I want you to do a lap, a 5K lap, while singing nursery rhymes and time yourself, and then a 5K lap swearing your socks off.
Yeah.
And give me the...
Well, I tell you what, it's the Sun News Desk do tonight, so why didn't you come along and we can have a race and see if we can do it? Who can do it furthest? Who can say the worst words?
Oh, gosh. I can definitely say the worst words in multiple languages as well. I love swearing. My mum's, my mum's very much of the age where she's like, Alex, she hates swearing. I love it.
Yeah.
It's one of my favourite things. But here we go. So by swearing, we throw off social constraints and allow ourselves to push harder in different situations. Swearing, and these are the words in the Sun, is literally a calorie-neutral, drug-free, low-cost, readily available tool at our disposal for when we need a boost in performance. So on that note, there we go. I managed to get through the last 15 minutes now. Okay, seen it once, actually.
Yes, so Christmas films, everybody's watching them. Eleanor Gunn, who wrote this, admitted that last night she actually watched Love Actually and is a staple view in her house. But it turns out that Keira Knightley has only watched it once.
Really?
Yeah, can't remember any of the lines, got no love for the film, only watched it once, and that's all gone. Dead to her now.
Wow.
Yeah, and she's revealed in this podcast, and as the world, I mean, I think my wife might have watched it on several occasions recently as well, but yeah, no, she's revealed that she's,
But she does say, I've seen it once, if you're in it, it would be weird if I was watching my own, because I kind of agree with that. It's not like I go home and think, oh, do you know what I'm going to do tonight? I'm going to stick myself up on YouTube and have a good old watch. It'd be very uncomfortable and weird.
Yeah.
I wonder if many sort of film stars, apart from sort of at the premiere or whatever, actually then go back and watch their material.
I used to cover premieres, and quite often you would catch it'd be sort of 10 minutes into the film and you'd catch the stars running off because they didn't want to watch the film.
Yeah, it must just be weird, especially if it's sort of like a sex scene or something. Like, oh man, I don't want to be here right now. Deeply uncomfortable. Hey, good stories again today. And can I just say, the swearing story, I'm going to be jogging out of the studio the minute that Ofcom haven't got their ears on me, and I am going to get through my top 10 favourite rudest words to cheer myself up. It's that little thrill, that little sort of spark of rebellion that you get with a good old swear. And I've never really understood the logic of swearing, right? Why is it with certain words that, you know, you're not supposed to say, I get it, because they are demeaning or offensive to or about an individual. But when it comes to a different combination of letters representing fecal matter, why should, you know, poo be okay and then, you know, a word beginning with S and ending in T not be? Well, it means the same thing. I don't understand who sat there and one day went, do you know what, that word for fecal matter, we're going to make sure that's not allowed. But this one, that's okay.
Yeah.
I actually don't understand. I don't know where it came from. No?
No, don't know.
No one does.
No.
There we are. And I do
Just
like
the
a bit of
laws.
etymology. Just them rules. Just them rules of Ofcom. Anyway, Will, thank you ever so much for coming up to floor 17 and have a safe passage back down to your own lovely floor.
Cheers.
And your Christmas do tonight.
Yeah.
OK, we're taking a short break now, but don't go anywhere, because after the break, I'm looking forward to having you on the line and reading some of your messages as well. If you want to make a last-minute gambit to get on air, the number is 0344499 1000. It's your normal network rate as well. You can use that to send a last-minute WhatsApp, or indeed, if you want to try and squeeze in a last-minute text, it's 87222. Right talk before you message. I'm back after this.
This journey of me following the migrants went from sort of 10 in the morning, all around the clock, to late at night, to the point where, you know, on buses, on trains, through streets, at every key point, French military police and the French police, they were there. They were on the bus, taking down notes, taking pictures, but not doing anything to deter the migrants or stop them, just being there.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back. It is time to do some calls, and let's hit up the phone lines and see who we have got first. It is Claire in Leeds. Hi, Claire.
Hello, Alex. Can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear, my darling.
Hello. Great show. I feel like so many of the conversations you've had today actually sort of, there are many strands of the same conversation, really. And the reason I phoned was because I have a 16-year-old boy. And so we've experienced the education process in the last 10 years. He was actually at primary school in quite a deprived neighbourhood in Leeds, where our Leeds Labour Council put the first tolerated street prostitution zone where we lived, which was an absolute disaster for the residents and for the women that were trapped in the industry. And Leeds City Council absolutely tried to convince us that being a sex worker was some sort of empowering feminist victory, and that we should all be much more patient about it whilst our children were witnessing this sort of hell unfolding in our streets. But what I wanted to say is I moved my son away from there when he was going to go to secondary school because of what we witnessed. And he started at a semi-rural secondary school, which around the time of BLM and then all of the sort of the trans and gender stuff, what we found is that the reaction from the education system has been hysterical about most issues to do with teenage kids. And that we've often felt like they've whipped up more anxiety and worry in young people, because I mean, in my experience, the majority of young people are lovely natured. They're trying to figure out their own personalities and their own ways in the world. The majority of kids, fortunately, the vast majority of kids have got parents that can guide them. And I do feel like there's space in the education system to capture kids that maybe come from more vulnerable backgrounds and stuff like that. But painting the whole of sort of, teenage lads and stuff like that as some sort of vile misogynist.
Yeah, I mean, this is what concerns me, because, I actually ended up going to an all-boys school in the sixth form.
Yeah.
Not because I am actually secretly a boy, I ain't, because they let girls in the sixth form. We weren't many. Yeah. There was a handful of girls in a school of 800. And as you can imagine, in an all-male environment, the jokes were pretty fresh. And I'm sure that, and I loved it there. It was my favourite school. I absolutely loved hanging out with all the boys. I remember they once tied me to the foosball table with their school ties. I mean, blimey, couldn't do that these days. But some of the jokes they made and the nicknames and the comments, they would be the ones being dragged off for these misogyny classes. They were not a problem. When I see some of these guys I went to school with, they're happily married, lovely men. There is this difference between locker room talk and boys will be boys and things that are actually harmful, which to me is a sort of ongoing harassment, persistent pursuit of women.
Consistently during my son's education, when there was, I remember several sort of instances where there was a teacher that had overheard the boys talking about Andrew Tate, because the algorithms had sort of sent Andrew Tate videos to their Snapchats or whatever it was that they were doing. But the reaction from the staff was more hysterical than the children themselves.
But I mean, this is it. The thing is, that Andrew Tate is a product. He's a symptom of a problem, not the cause of a problem. And I think he started off being generated out of this sort of man-bashing environment. Before I let you go, Claire, you were talking about a legal red light district, I'm assuming in Holbeck in Leeds, which is going to be scrapped after a significant reduction of sex workers in the area. It has now been scrapped. The managed approach allowed sex workers to operate without fear of prosecution, but it was paused in March 2020. Those who managed the zone said the number of sex workers had fallen by 50%, with an average of 22 women currently recorded in a week. Leeds City Council said it would move to a city-wide plan to help sex workers. Anyway, that was just clarifying about the managed approach. Let's speak now quickly to George, who's in Dundee. Hi, George.
Hi, how are you doing?
I'm very well. How are you?
Yeah, very good. It's just regarding this toxic masculinity sort of thing. I think a lot of this has stemmed from the bashing of just proper masculinity, and it leads to some youngsters going to the opposite end of the scale into the toxic. If I can give you an example, EastEnders and Coronation Street, for example, just about every man on that programme is portrayed as a thug or a racist or a complete and utter buffoon. And it's normalised. You've got Jess Phillips and the other Yasmin, is it Yasmin, someone Brown that's on the Jeremy Vine show or something? They loathe men. They ridicule men. It drips from them how much they can't stand men. And it's just accepted. And the last wee bit, showing you the difference here, Edinburgh Airport last night, waiting on my luggage coming off with my lady wife. There was an older gent there, about 70, dapper, blazer on, and the wee cap, well turned out. The cases were coming round. One side of them was an older lady, the other side of them was a young woman, maybe mid-20s, but a very small young woman. Her case comes round and she starts hauling it off the conveyor belt. Right? She can't manage it. The man says to her, "Do you want to help with that?" She rounded on him in no uncertain terms that she could manage herself. And he stood back for her. The older lady then says to him, "You can lift mine off. Here, it's coming round here." He lifted it up off the conveyor belt for her. She thanked him. He doffed his cap.
Yeah.
That's the difference right there.
Do you know, it's so true. I always do this little test when I'm on the tube going home, because like, I still believe, I like old-fashioned values, and I think, especially if a woman's trying to totter around in high heels, or if it's a woman who is sort of, you know, mother plus age, people should stand up for them. You know, if it's someone who's senior to you, if someone who's elderly, you should offer them a seat on the tube. And do you know what? I notice time and time again, the men on the tube who stand up and offer their seats are always the young black men. It's never the white guys in the suits going for their expensive jobs in the city. It is really beautifully brought up guys who've probably got parents in the Commonwealth with traditional values. And I wish that we as a society celebrated those traditional values and stopped attacking and emasculating men for being gentlemen. George, thank you ever so much. And talking about gentlemen, look
Alex,
at you.
that was a seamless link.
I know.
Thanks for bringing me in on that high note.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, and absolutely delighted to be in here for Samara in for Kevin.
Yeah, so it's sort of not Kevin, not Samara, but you. So you're sort of...
It's me.
Basically, they're scraping the barrel, and look what's at the bottom.
That's kind. That's not as kind as what you did before.
No, but no, you're brilliant, and it's great to have you in the hot seat tonight, and you've got to talk about misogyny, I guess.
We are, because Kevin has warned me this has made the screens, the phones really hot tonight.